Where's our adapter? Yeah, we have an adapter. No, we have.
Did you leave us in the plates last time?
I did.
You did, so it shuts down.
Okay.
Just gotta keep this straight.
She said, will you help?
Order, please. If we could all stand for a moment of silence, then we'll ask Mr. Bradley to lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shall we call the roll?
Mr. Bradley?
We'll just share.
Mrs. Conway?
Here.
Mrs. Singer-Erdley?
Here.
Mr. Lesby?
Here.
Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mrs. Tingle-Sains? Here. Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Are you
Mr. Thompson?
here?
We didn't want to confuse anybody earlier.
She was trying.
Too late.
Well, good evening, everyone. One of those unusual times when we have 3 weeks between council meetings, and it just seems like a long time since we've been together. But we have plenty to do tonight, so we'll make up for lost time. How is that?
Thank you.
Each of you should have a copy of the minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting. If you'd like to take a moment to look those over for any possible corrections or additions.
Motion for approval, Mayor.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. And if there are no corrections or additions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. In your packet, you each should have had a copy of 2 check registers since it's been 3 weeks since we met. Would each of you indicate if you've received those check registers? Thank you. Now at the moment in our agenda when we have public comments. Megan Funk. Hi, Megan. Hi. How are you?
Hello. I just want to ask for permission to close Water Street on April 25th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., specifically the distance between Main Street and Cooper Alley, just south of Cooper Alley, not cutting off access to that street at all, for our Garden Day in the Park activities that will be taking place at the Arts and Cultural Center. And do you all need to vote and to approve that? Is that okay?
This is street closure, we probably do.
Okay, thank you.
So
I'll make a motion for the closure.
motion's been made.
Second. Chuck can have it.
I heard Connie, but I saw Chuck. So
Yeah.
I think it was Chuck.
Okay. And then I have a second request as well. Is this, oh wait,
You could get the first.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll get used to this at some point.
Oh, you may go.
Okay, the second request is last year we had people in the community decorate bikes and place them on the bicycle stands around downtown. And since those are a piece of public infrastructure, we wanted to ask permission to do that event again this year.
You want,
During the month of May, for the Horsey 100, people decorated bicycles and placed them on the bike stands that are around the sidewalks downtown.
That should be no problem.
that sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
We thought it would be interesting.
The stands are already there. That's what the stands are for.
Yeah, but it's on our sidewalk. So it's really good.
Yeah.
Just I'll vote to go ahead and give you approval whether you need it or not. How about that?
Well, thank you very much, Karen.
I'll make the motion.
Motion's been made. Motion's been seconded. We're not sure if it's required.
Okay, well, we just
gonna
wanted
be
to make
covered
sure
one way or the
since.
other.
We are going to do this well. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
You have permission to use the bike
Well,
racks.
thank you very much, City Council.
Well, and we appreciate the continued effort on public events.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Lai? Lai?
Lee, yeah, my name is Lee. Good evening, Mayor. It's taken me some time to figure out to come to here to bring up the. It's about the flood issue on Broadway Street. I live on Broadway in the Rocker, and I want to know what's the city plan resolving the flood issue on that area, and it's getting worse and worse each year, and. What's the plan to maintain this old 100-year-old stone drain system over there? You know what I'm talking?
Talking in the South Broadway area?
And the Rocker, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the stones, the wall collapsed in the ditch, so someone needed to go clean that, and I think that will help the flood issue.
Are you aware of the area that?
I don't believe the ditch falls within an easement, but I'll check on it.
I got the photos here. If one part on the one house, the garage, and the wall fell down, and the soils and my garden and my neighbor's garden. Every time it flooded, washed the soil away to it went to the drain ditch. It's cluttered. It's very bad. Every time a little rain. Last time, I'm still having the fever since last rain. Since I had to save my lawnmower, my yard got flooded. So I'm not. So I apologize for that. So, and is there anything I can do to help resolve that?
Well, and thank you for that offer. I think the problem is bigger than you can help with.
Yeah, I just getting to the point. I'm so just feel like so desperate. I want to come to here and find out how can I help.
Yes, ma'am. The one thing that we think might offer the most immediate help is a project that we have let the bid on through our city engineer to have some of the existing storm sewers cleaned out of the sediment and debris that are in those storm drains.
Yeah.
We think that cleaning them out will make them more efficient and able to carry more water.
Yeah.
We do not think that is a complete long-term solution. Eventually, we're looking at spending many millions of dollars to replace some old storm sewer infrastructure. But at this time, what we want to do is clean our existing storm sewer structures so that they can work as they're engineered to work.
Yeah.
And they can have the best chance of removing as much water as we can.
Are they going to rebuild the wall that's collapsed?
I can't comment on the wall that's collapsed until we go see. I'm not sure exactly where the wall is you're describing.
Yeah, if they go, I can show him. Because this 100-year-old Stormwater Creek is not being maintained over the past. I spend money to fix, on my part of the house, I rebuilt the wall, but the house next door, nobody they haven't done anything. So, and that nobody ever cleaned the ditch itself, the soil under there. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I think there has been, I think for many years, there has been maintenance that has been not done regularly.
Yeah, since I live there, I don't see. I called a few years ago. They came cleaned, but that's it. Clean the leaves, and I appreciate that.
I would ask if you could give, the gentleman sitting over here is our city engineer, Mr. Goodwin.
Okay.
If you could give him the address so that we could go by and
We've
inspect.
spoken before. I know where she is.
You know where it is? Okay.
Okay, I can go meet you, and is there anything I can do? I can help. I'm willing to work with you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And do we have your contact information?
No.
If you could leave us your phone number so we
Sure.
could get back in touch with you.
Yeah, sure.
To
I'll
let
do-
you know what we've
Okay.
seen or we found.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I provide a quick update?
Please.
About a month ago, we advertised for pipe cleaning services. We did not receive any responses from a 2-week advertisement. Finally, after that point, I just solicited a couple companies, and just last week we signed a contract, and they actually started today. So
Are we working on that section of town first?
it's specifically that section from our previous discussions regarding the project downtown. One of the directions was to clean out the pipes. So this has been about a month and a half process to get to this point, but they actually did start today.
Well, I don't believe even the pipes being cleaned would have took care of the water that we've had in the last few weeks anyway.
No.
We've had historic rainfalls, but on an average rain, if we get them cleaned out, it probably would help 100%, I'd say.
And in fact, Marvin, to that point, Kyle has actually done the engineering calculations, and we know, given the number of surface areas that are draining into this one area, that our pipe size is not adequate. We can do those calculations today and know that they're not adequate, but they're going to function at their peak efficiency when they're cleaned out. And I think we've got an obligation to at least get them to that stage and then evaluate where we are before we go forward. Thank you, Kyle. Ms. Laurie Sanders.
Good evening. You all know when I come, what I'm coming for generally. Party on the Square is getting ready to take place again. It's our 3rd annual, hosted by Georgetown Scott County Tourism, and I've got a few dates to request from you all. So, of course, we want to kick off Memorial Weekend once again on May 23rd, because we will have 2,000 cyclists hitting the streets during Horsey 100. So I was so glad to hear that Megan and Janice at the Arts and Cultural Center were working on getting the bicycles decorated for downtown, so it just adds to the festivities. So we're excited about that. So May 23rd is the first date with Tim Talbert Project. Saturday, June the 20th, will be hometown local favorite, Too Cool. Saturday, July 18th, will be Sidewinder. It's a country band with a little bit of a bite, they say. And new to Party on the Square will be Vinyl Richie, which will be sure to bring back some memories for many of us. And we will finish up with Rocksteady, who will play all of our favorites. We will continue to support the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off on October the 1st. So what I'm essentially asking for is to close Court Street at 2 p.m. Now, I am always down here at 2 p.m. What we've done in the last couple of years is put the barricade up between Galvin's and the courthouse, allowing traffic to still flow around that curve for the business owners who are still open after 2 p.m. They generally are out of there by 2:30, so I can completely cut it off at 3 p.m. for my bands to come in. I have requested permission from District 7 just because we are overflowing. As many of you know, we are quite comfortable. We're getting to know our friends really well as we squeeze into Court Street, which is a good thing, which is a very good thing. My Lexington people are now getting to know the Georgetown people, who are getting to know the Cynthiana people that keep on coming back month after month. We will not close any part of Main Street until after 7 p.m., and that would be a call that would be determined by the police department. Now, last year we were able to keep everybody inside of Court Street. We plan to continue to do that, but we have made preparations just in case. You know, nothing be better than if we just expanded and grew and had to step outside those boundaries, but that is not the plan. We will leave that as a determination for the police department and, of course, for Public Works if that was needed. But we would not do it until after 7 p.m. We plan to end the concerts this year at 10, so we will be able to open up Court Street back at 11 o'clock.
Good.
Do you all have any questions? And I did put a schedule for you all there.
Do you need approval for all these street closings?
I do.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
It's been made and seconded. So we
And I
like-
should have.
We like our party on the square.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. We love it. And then, because we have had, last year, for the first time ever, we had two weather conditions. So we had to delay one concert a little bit later, but then another one we had to reschedule. So I'm asking also to go the following weekend as my rescheduled date, which would be June 27th, July 25th, August 22nd, and September 26th. You notice I did not mention Memorial Weekend because that's not changing. It will go rain or shine since we've got the cyclists downtown.
Is that true for the September and October?
October for the cook-off, yes, it has to stay at the same time because that will be Festival of the Horse. So September would be the 26th date, would be when we would reschedule. Or I can come each month, and ask to push them up further if that, for the date, for the rain date makeups, if that's easier. I was just trying to get a few dates secured just in case we needed them for rain dates.
That might not be a bad idea to let her come back and let us know that people know that it didn't happen this weekend. We're going to have it the following weekend.
Yeah, if you can make that step,
Yeah.
then that would eliminate. We just leave the motion the way it is.
Right.
And not further complicate it.
And hopefully you won't have to see me again because we want sunshine. No rain. No rain, if we can help it.
Now,
Well, we don't have a very good track record with weather events this year. We're not going to guarantee that.
you never know.
We have a motion and a second to allow Court Street to be closed on these days for the party on the square. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank
very
you.
much.
And I have one more request, and that is for the Festival of the Horse. Believe it or not, our committee is already starting to work. We finish one and immediately move on to the next one. Karen knows she's with the Grand Parade. She does a lot of work for that, and immediately after it's finished, we start with the following years coming up. So we are running on our 35th annual Festival of the Horse. As you know, it is Thursday, October 1st, which will be the kickoff with the chili cook-off, and will end on Sunday, October the 4th. So what I'm requesting is permission to close the street on Thursday at 2 p.m. and then open back up on October the 4th at 8 p.m. And we have already got approval from the state, from District 7, too, for Main Street for that.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion's been made and seconded. We like our Festival of the Horse as well.
And Lori-
Two great events.
Lori is very efficient, very.
Thank you.
Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Lori, again, we've talked about this extensively. Megan and her board have talked about this extensively, and hopefully your Main Street program will be partners with all of this and help co-promote and raise the profile of our downtown.
Well, I am happy to report Megan and I have a wonderful relationship, and we are actually working on a lot of projects together. So it is nice to have a partnership like the Georgetown Main Street program, because we can accomplish so much more when we have a cooperative spirit. We were just talking earlier about her coming out and helping us at the Rolex. She's going to be down at Horsey 100 volunteering at our booth there. We're already working on the festival, and Megan's a part of that. So we're very pleased and very happy that we've got Megan as the Georgetown Main Street Director.
Well, and I appreciate those comments. It's something that we want the council to be aware of, that council expressed an expectation that this cooperation occur, and we just would like to communicate that it is.
Well, you've got a cooperative spirit in us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll also mention, for those that may not be aware, between October 1st and October the 4th, during our Festival of the Horse, a delegation from Japan will be here helping us celebrate the 25th anniversary of our sister city relationship. So those are their anticipated travel dates as well. So, thank you, Laurie. Next on the list of public comments, Kimberly Meredith.
Hello. I was wanting to ask for permission to have a 5K downtown on June 27th with a regular 5K route. And that would mean having some road closure there. It's for to help a friend of mine who has thyroid cancer, and she's battling that and has she's had several surgeries. So to give her some moral and financial support as well as raise awareness for thyroid cancer. And it would be on the morning of the 27th, that's Saturday, starting setting up the streets and the roads and everything for the race around 7:30 in the morning, and then actually starting the race and then being done by around noon.
Okay,
Yeah, we have that in their packet. She's already turned in her insurance.
that's already in the
Yeah.
packet.
Yeah.
Good, good, you have that. Not that it affects this particular vote, but it's a good opportunity for us to update the council. You'll recall that we had a gentleman with the Findlay 5K approach us, and they wanted to consider other potential routes for 5K races, some that would involve fewer street closures, some that would involve more street closures, depending on how many participants that they had in mind. So Captain Swanigan and some of his team have looked at various routes, looked at how many street closures would be involved, and from that they've calculated how many police overtime hours would be necessary to actually work the route in different configurations. In our basic configuration that we've used previously on 5K races, we can establish pretty carefully what the cost for the police department are. And I think our internal discussions have kind of centered around, we can use that as our base situation, one that we've typically offered citizens to use in the past at no charge. Some of the other routes that will accommodate a far greater crowd and will involve more street closures, the cost goes up considerably. And I just want the council to know that the police department and we have been working on that. And as other groups have requests, we can possibly give them one of 3 or 4 options. A couple of those options may have cost associated with them, but some options should have no cost associated with them. So we have been doing that work. We're ready to have that talk with the Findlay 5K folks. I think it's good that we've developed different 5K routes that we might be able to use depending on when the circumstances call for those. That's more explanation than you needed for your request, but is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Holly's made the motion. Ms. Conway with the second. If there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you all.
Thank you. Ms. Barbara Tilford. Mr. Bass Tilford. I see both names on here.
I really hate to come up here, but Mayor and Council, women and men, I'm concerned about the traffic in the Boston area. I'm with the understanding that you all are planning to, the railroads is wanting to give you all a certain amount of money to buy the bridge, and close the bridge, I mean, and it'd be a disaster to our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is already congested. Our traffic is terrible. In my house, at my house, just to sit on the porch, I've counted hundreds of cars passing there. I have great-grandchildren, and they do visit. I don't have a fence around my front. I don't plan to put a fence around my front because it's costly to keep it up. Now, I don't know about the rest of the people that I haven't touched bases with, or they haven't touched bases with me. The ones that haven't touched bases, they're not for it either. it's too many vehicles around on the street in the residential area. Too many Toyota workers are coming by that way, they go to Bridge, that is not Bridge Street, that is East Side, and they go on up to Bridge Street and come out and go to their subdivisions wherever. I'm not knocking the subdivisions because I'm glad to see there's more things than Indian Hills. And that traffic, if that bridge is closed, you're going to push that traffic around to Bourbon Street. And there's many children that play up and down those streets, St. Martin Luther King Boulevard, Payne Street, and Chambers Avenue. Now we have the park there on Chambers Avenue, Ed Davis. Now the children are going to be out of school soon. Not only the children get off the bus right now, you're going to have that traffic so bound, somebody's going to get killed, somebody's going to get hurt. And whatever reason that you all do not want to repair that that bridge, you all don't live in that area. So you got to come there and see how that traffic is. Not only that, it dusts up my windows, all that traffic. They over in my street on my side, knocking my dirt up outside my lawn. And others have the same complaint. But the main thing is the safety of the tomorrow. Those children do not need to be killed, hurt, or anything. And if anyone wants to develop that area, if he's got that kind of money to develop that area in Bridge Street, down at Bridge Street, he got an engineer, he or she, a group, a company, whatever, get an engineer and find a way to go in and out that way without closing that bridge. Not only that, the bridge has a history. It's a historical bridge. Now, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but one year, the railroad gave approximately $104,000 to develop and decorate that area. If I'm wrong, this is some of the things I've gotten from the residents. And they put a little plank on Paris Pike across the bridge and a few flowers. Now, wherever that money is, I don't care where it is. If there's any more money left, fix that bridge so we can use that area for traffic. Not only that, those people that's coming from Toyota or wherever they work, they can make quicker access to their home if they can use the East Side Street on into Bridge Street and go to their homes. Everybody's in a hurry. They're on the telephone, or they doing something with their fingers. You can see them. It's not safe for us. It's not safe for my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and any other grandchildren. So y'all take a look at that. I don't care how much money the city ain't not poor. And definitely the railroad side. So they can repair that bridge, and not only repair that bridge, the Paris Pike Bridge that's over Paris Pike. Today, I've been watching that traffic there. It is jammed up when your Toyota's gets off from work. I tried to get out of a driveway there. It took me 20 minutes. That's a lot of things. If you take that traffic to East Side, that would save some of that traffic. Some of that traffic most of the traffic don't even go to Washington Street to your right, but it goes on up all up Main Street. I think I'm in my own hometown, Georgetown Street, but it is terrible. Now I know a man in the neighborhood. I don't know if he wants his name called or not, but he lives on Bridge Street, and there is more than 100 and some cars in one given evening passing his place. So, another thing, whoever put that blocks up there, Bass got a picture of it. And that bridge, you know what they did with the signs that they had up there? threw them on the ground. We like that neighborhood. My husband and I have been there more than 50 years, and we love it, and we're not going no place else. But the city should have picked that up. I seen that it was taken away. The neighborhood looks bad already. And I want you to remind you all that every street in Georgetown would have to pay for repaving. Not one of those streets now has to be paid for repaving because I brought a project to Georgetown and it went. Think about it. You were on the end, you had to pay for 2 streets. You would have to pay for, if you was on Georgetown, Main Street and Broadway, of course I know that's a state street, but I'm using an example, that you'd have to pay for Broadway and Main Street. Just think, aren't you all happy that you don't have to pay for repaving of the street? Because your tax money comes through. Every time you put that gas meter, that gas tank, fill that gas tank out, those taxes pays for it. So think about that. The neighborhood is not like we want it to be. And while I'm going around the neighborhood too, they need to go around and cut some grass and weeds around there where the people have not, the houses have been torn down. Our people know they are vacant. This needs to be addressed as well. But the main thing is that bridge,
Yes, ma'am.
closing it up. Thank you, ma'am.
May I respond to you about the bridge?
Yeah, go ahead. I love it. I love it.
Could I make comments before you respond?
Yes, sir.
I'll read why the planning and zone, the Board of Adjustment had a meeting before with the other mayor and a few council members. I think Mr. Lester may have been there. And my comment was, at that time, the railroad company saw fit not to use equipment like they do now to build the bridge. So I think it was $50,000 was offered there then. Now, since it's come out of that department, it's gone to city council, I guess the dollars is up. But the railroad company has plenty of money, multi-million dollars. So I'm here with my wife to just appeal to go back to the railroad company. My question is, did the State Department have planes or some other thing flying around looking for bad bridges? Somebody called them. So whoever that is, I want to know who the person was from the State Department if you have to have a public hearing and bring citizens in to talk about it. So that's the reason why I'm here to ask about the bridge. Being very kind and being asked in a nice way. The other things to do, like they're doing all over the other cities, like hands up and bring in demonstrators and block off traffic or whatever. This is a serious thing. And the railroad company is a multi-million-dollar company. So if the city takes the money, that's like payoff. It's gangster stuff. Well, what would you do with the money if you get it? So think about it before you let the railroad company punk you out. I guess the only way I can say it. Thank you.
Also, can I add another one before you talk? You know that area, believe it or not, some of the older people my age group, I'm a senior citizen, but the age group they're saying, well, we won't get to have our black greens. You know, I didn't realize that that's a meal for some of them. And just nature brings them greens in that area. So they need to cross that bridge and come back over that bridge so they can get some greens for the feed their family.
Let me address the bridge situation just real directly. We have no intention of taking over that bridge or having that bridge removed. The bridge still belongs to Norfolk Southern Railroad. The state of Kentucky's bridge inspector is the one who inspected the bridge on a regular bridge inspection schedule and decided to close the bridge. Norfolk Southern has asked us again to take over ownership of the bridge, let them destroy it, and them give us $100,000 or $120,000 toward reconstruction of the bridge. Our response to the railroad company has been, you need to come fix your bridge now. We have no intention of closing that bridge permanently. We have no intention of owning that bridge. We do expect Norfolk Southern Railroad to fix that bridge as soon as possible.
Okay.
We have, in the same conversations with Norfolk Southern, we have raised the issue of the Paris Pike overpass. We think it creates a significant bottleneck for Georgetown. No matter what we do on either side of that bridge, we've got a natural bottleneck with that overpass. We've asked that the railroad consider replacing that overpass with a more modern structure. Railroads aren't very responsive to many people. Railroads do about what they want to. What they told me in response to my request about Paris Pike is that bridge is structurally sound and they're happy with it, and that it doesn't need anything done to it. I asked what it would take to get that overpass replaced. That it just needs to happen for the benefit of this community, and I was told that if everyone agreed, including the railroad, which they don't agree, that it would take us 10 to 15 years to have that situation improved. My response to those railroad executives was that is absolutely not acceptable. We have taken this issue to District 7. We've discussed it with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. The follow-up letter that we got from Norfolk Southern indicated that they would also contact District 7 and let them know of our request. We have taken as firm a position as we possibly can with the railroad and that bridge. And we're not going to change our opinion. We do not intend to close that bridge.
One more thing.
Yes, sir.
Your comments and the South and the press, I'm just wondering, like in all cities, public opinion needs to get out. Letters needs to go to the railroad company. There may be signs or whatever, people hold them. Let them know that we here in Georgetown, with a multi-million-dollar company, I'm not satisfied with them not doing anything. Thank you.
I intend to use all the influence available to me to get that message across.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you
You all
all.
have a blessed night.
Mayor, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
And I don't know if this would apply to you or Kyle or whom, but would there be any way to do temporary repairs to the bridge to where it could at least withstand foot traffic or bicycle traffic?
Yeah, I'm going to pass this around, David. I brought it with us tonight. It is the letter that we got from Mr. Daniel Casilla, who is the bridge engineer for District 7. And it's his official report on the Bridge Street Bridge. The reason I wanted to bring it to the council and let you all evaluate the pictures that are the close-up detailed pictures that are included in this report that show the underneath support beams.
That's what it was last time.
I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
But you all can pass it around and look at these pictures. I wanted you all to see it tonight.
Wasn't that their comment last time they wanted to close it because it was potholes or something and underneath was so? See, we went through this a few years ago and they wanted to close it. Somehow we got through without closing it.
This time they actually sent a machine in that reaches under and goes
Right.
under and lets them physically see and take
Right.
close-up pictures.
Probably the last time it was between us and the railroad.
Right.
The state wasn't involved
State
into
jumped
it,
in now.
and this time the state's come.
Yeah.
So it's probably just aged even more over the last several years.
Yeah.
This is a state action that's closed it. This is not a city action. But we are not going to agree to take over ownership of that bridge. Railroad needs to fix their bridge. And Bass, if you all would like, after the council takes a look, these are detailed pictures of the underneath of the bridge and the engineering report.
Mr. Jones lives on the street. Trucks is tearing up the street too. So the street, that's the city's responsibility. We'll fix the street, the least cut, so the people come through there, it's safer. We won't see them driving up beside weeds and stuff, so.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Speak these things.
Thank you.
They tore my mailbox down 3 times.
All right, do you want to come to the podium and make a statement, or? And your name, sir?
My name is Alan Jones. I've lived here all my life. I live on 101 Roach right now, which is connected to Bridge. And Fred Lewis has big trucks to pick up them cars that they got for junks. And they've been through there several times, and they've tore my mailbox down 3 times. I've replaced it. And they're also tearing the road up. They're digging the banks off the other inside of the people's property. Them big trucks don't need to be coming through there.
I think that's why they may have reduced the load limit on that bridge to 3 tons.
I know the city has replaced blacktop, but it's done back out again.
Yes, sir.
That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Ready to go?
The other side will get it. They got to look at it next on the other side. I've got one set.
It's, yes, it's
You've got the wrong one. Pieces rusted out pretty bad. You know, we put through this a few years ago. We like changed it to look, we got it opened back up. We did. We fixed the welding.
We've got a key participant in our meeting tonight that I'm going to ask the council's permission and indulgence to slightly change the order of our agenda so that we can have some testimony from somebody that has to leave, but I think it'll be helpful. If we could skip over my comments, we'll come back to those, don't worry. I'll have plenty of comments for you. But if we could skip down to item 7, which is the Planning and Zoning first reading of an amendment to the subdivision regulation ordinance. This is the ordinance that we questioned at length at the last meeting concerning the digital submission of what are supposed to be minor subdivision plats. And Joe is here and Brent is here. I think Brent does some of the detailed work on these kinds of things. I know Brent has another meeting to go to, so Joe, I thought I might move you up in the agenda.
Yeah, that works.
So we could have as thorough a conversation as we need to make sure council's concerns are met before we vote on the ordinance.
Okay. I had a handout that I only have 10 copies, so
We can share
there,
anyway.
Inez, if I need to share.
We can do that.
Yeah, as the mayor mentioned, I brought Brent Combs. He's he's been a surveyor engineer for 30 years, so he can maybe answer some of the questions on cost, increased cost, and also Whitley Wolf, our GIS analyst, is here if you have any specific questions about GIS. The handout that's going around relates to the kind of the conversation we had about development plans. And I just wanted to clarify, with this new ordinance revision, we're requiring the digital submittal with minor development plans and plats. I've included information on development plans, defining what is a minor development plan, just so that we're all on the same page as far as what is a minor. Essentially, a minor development plan is any development that adds no new buildings or parking lots of greater than 20 spaces. And in addition to that, in industrial areas, minor developments can also include building or outdoor storage expansion up to 10% of the total square footage or 10,000 square feet, whichever is less. So that kind of defines what a minor is. A development plan itself doesn't vary, has the same requirements whether it's a minor or a major. Minors go through staff review only. Majors go through a public hearing and go to the Planning Commission. So that's the difference. Amended plats and plans, same thing. When we get an amended plat or plan, we look at it and determine whether it's minor or major. If it has any new building, if it's a site that's already been developed, they're adding an addition to it, it's automatically a major. If there's site work involved, say they're moving the stormwater detention basin, they're moving some stormwater pipes, they're adding a shed, a detached building, they're moving the driveway, they're moving kind of the circulation, or they're adding to the parking lot less than 20 spaces, it's a minor. Doesn't go to Planning Commission, doesn't go through public hearings, just staff review. Up until now, under the old ordinance, those minors, they're not required to submit a digital submittal of their plans. Sometimes we request them and they submit them, but they're not required to submit them. So some examples of minor developments, and let me go back and say development plans are required for multifamily development, commercial development, and industrial development. Single family and duplexes are exempt from development plans. So we're talking about just apartments, commercial development, or industrial development. So examples: parking lot expansions less than 20 spaces, or any kind of reconfiguration of parking lots or driveways. Changes to existing approved plans that don't involve any new building or addition to the existing buildings. Examples are drive-through windows, adding a drive-through window, maybe adding a dumpster pad, a new dumpster, stormwater detention changes, other infrastructure site development changes like new driveways, new circulation, or new parking lots less than 20 spaces. Also, in industrial zoned areas, expansions of 10,000 square feet or less, or 10%, whichever is less. 10,000 square feet or 10%, whichever is less. And we determine that when they come in. Usually with the pre-construction meeting, we determine whether it's going to be a minor or major. Some recent examples in town, the Toyota paint building expansion. So on the Toyota plant, they're expanding some of the plant to accommodate the Lexus line. That's going to have to require reconfiguring of their plant. That was considered a minor because it was determined to be under 10% expansion. Johnson Controls is adding a parking lot. That was a recent application. Again, that's a minor. They're paving a new area for some employee parking. There might be some stormwater involved in that. Little Caesars a couple years ago added a dumpster, may have added some storage, and may have made some changes to the site. Frank's Donuts, and we've had a few other drive-throughs that have come through as minors. I was really going to let Brent talk about the extra costs, but really, as far as the extra steps or extra costs to a developer or to an applicant, if there's any new construction or new building, it's a major anyway. So there's no change. It's really those sites where they're making minor changes, and the extra cost. I guess if we don't already have a digital plan, if there's not an AutoCAD drawing already, then the additional cost would be for the new applicant to come in and get a copy of that plan, scan it, and add it as a base layer, digitize it, basically draw it into CAD, and then there's really no extra cost to doing the drawing and submitting the digital because it's line work that would have to be done anyway. It just has to be done in this format, so it has to be created in layers as this ordinance states. So I mean, we don't allow hand-drawn drawings to be submitted as a development plan. They have to be CAD, or they have to be done professionally done. So any development plan that's required is going to have to be done in a way that a digital submittal can be submitted anyway. You can ask Brent, since he's here, any specific questions about cost, but I think the cost really is the extra time to set up, the first time setup of the layers, and then if there's no plan that's already been done on the site, scanning that base layer, and then I guess there may be an additional cost to tie it to the state plane coordinates, because we require any plan to be on the state plane so that we can drop it into our GIS. So it's really just a matter of time, and I guess Brent's come up with an estimate for a site that had no plan, no digital plan already, to scan a base, digitize the base layer, would be approximately $100 to $500, depending on the I guess difficulty, the complexity of the site. So I'll let Brent, why don't you come up here? If you have, I know Chuck, you had a few questions specifically about the extra cost to do the drawings. And I tried to answer that a little bit, but I thought Brent would be, it would be better just to have Brent here in case you had more questions.
Well, basically the question was, really one question was the added burden onto the individuals trying to submit a minor plat, and why we were striking the wording that all those requirements were exempting a minor plat.
Well, we didn't exempt the minor plat per se before. We just didn't require. It wasn't required on those minor plats that were more complicated, say an industrial expansion that was considered a minor. We typically ask for the digital anyway, because they're doing the line work in CAD. They're creating the drawing. We typically ask for it anyway. It just wasn't in our ordinance that it was required. So, you know, the hand drawing plans have gone, you know, are in the past. They're not allowed anymore. So I would say, you know, the additional cost is that time to do the setup, and then to create the drawing itself, and to submit it to us, I guess. But I mean, the drawing's going to be done anyway. Brent,
just if anybody has some questions, but I think part of what Joe's trying to say is that the whole emphasis or impetus behind this is that more and more everything is keyed to our GIS system, whether we're talking about the city or whether we're talking about the county. More and more of the information, if you've been on our website and looked at our interactive maps, whether it's flood zone information, whether it's the parcel finder, whether it's the plat finder, all of that information starts with the GIS-based system. So the idea is that the more projects that we can get submitted in such a fashion that it can be woven into the GIS system, then the better you are. So in my mind, it's not so much that you need the information, it's who pays for it. So if you don't want the developers to add that little extra cost, then probably at some point the city will have to do it themselves. I can say that I was in a private business for 25, 28 years. I did most of my own CAD work. So what Joe is saying is true. You're creating a file, and you're going to create the lines, whether it be sidewalk, curb, edge of building, storm piping. You're creating the lines. This ordinance simply is kind of saying we want those lines identified on more layers than we have before. So when you create a line, you tell it what layer you want it in, whether you want it dashed, solid, whether you want it wide, skinny, and that sort of information. So the added expense is just the person on the computer taking the time to say, oh yeah, this line goes in the sidewalk layer, or this line goes in the storm pipe layer. So on that side of it, that's where the expense is. There is a second component, and it probably doesn't apply too much in the city, but that is in the field. The submittals have to be in the state plane coordinates, and what that is, Kentucky has a X and Y system that everybody goes by, and if it comes in that's what our GIS-based system is based on. So by the digital submittals being submitted on that format and in that coordinate, then our GIS department doesn't have to do anything other than say, take this and put it in our file, and it matches up exactly. Without that component, you've got a perfectly good drawing, but you have no idea where it goes in the base system. So to do that, if the project you're working on has not had been put on those coordinate systems before, then you have to use satellite GPS equipment in the field to do that. And so if you're next door to a plan that already has a digital submittal, then you get the coordinates from those. But there could be a few out there that don't, and so there would be $200 or $300 probably in the field work to get it onto our state plane coordinates. That has more of an impact out in the county probably than it does here in the city, because so much of our city projects are already on that coordinate system.
Brent, before we get to any questions, I wanted to add one thing. When we met and talked about this, we talked about simplifying the layers, that the burden of the layers aspect by providing a CAD file that was already layered, available to anyone who doesn't use it in that current format, or anyone who wants to update their CAD files to have the new layers that we're requesting, and providing that free to anyone to download. And I think that's worth mentioning, that if the fact that it's already sort of industry standard practice to do it that way isn't going to knock it out, adding that as an option for people to download eliminates the hours or so of work of having to go back and set up their files to accommodate this. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, it is. And whether or not we provide it for free or they do it, it's still just a one-time event. In other words, once you set the prototype file up in your CAD system, then each time you start a project, you just start with that, and then it already has the layers all in there. So, and over the years, I've worked for national surveying firms that would send me the border and all the layers that they wanted everything on, and so that's certainly. I don't know that we have that at the moment, but we could do that. Yeah. Any other questions?
David, you had done some work and had asked some questions. Does any of this information answer any of your concerns or raise fresh concerns?
I mean, I think Joe's probably kind of confirmed that there will be, or Brent has confirmed that there will be some additional costs, depending on what has to be done. What we're talking about are things that we're not overly familiar with, so it's probably a little bit difficult for us to really grasp exactly what you're talking about. And I guess a couple of questions I would have, Brent, is if that information were provided to an engineer, would they depend on that information? I mean, would they trust that information, or would they want to try to confirm that themselves in the field?
Well, what Andrew was talking about is simply a file that when you open it up and you go to the layering window,
yeah,
it would say stormwater pipes, stormwater text, sidewalk. In other words, all the text that you see in this new ordinance is already predefined.
Okay.
And that's all we're talking about.
Okay.
So they don't have to manually type all these different layers that they need.
I got you.
So they get to start with that template.
You get a template.
It's a template.
I understand.
They get to start with the template.
I thought that maybe existing details might be on the information that was going to be submitted.
Now, although that, we have details,
Yeah.
and if engineers ask, but I rarely have an engineer ask me for details.
Right.
If it's an engineering firm that's worked here at all, they're really set up already. I mean, they've been, our current ordinance, while it doesn't have, there's maybe 10 new layers that we didn't have before.
Right.
But they've been doing it all this time, and so they already have almost everything they need.
Yeah.
Now, on occasion, they've asked me for help with state plan coordinates, and I've been able to call up an adjoining development plan, get some coordinates and give them that so that they haven't have to go out with their GPS equipment. We have that capability if we have the information available.
Yeah.
We certainly share that.
Yeah. I mean, Mayor, I guess it's kind of a balancing act. I think myself and the councils that I've been involved with have been very supportive of planning and zoning, and certainly the GIS system and all the funding that's gone into it and the benefits that the community has gained. At one time, I think that information was available at no charge, and then there became a charge, and we understood that. We probably had to approve that charge to allow people to have access to the GIS information. But what we've heard over the years has been, there's challenges. When you go through the planning and zoning process, it's a very cumbersome, lengthy process. And I think what the council was saying is we wanted to try to be a business-friendly community. And I'm not saying that from my perspective. I hear that out in the field. And that's, with me being in banking and coming in contact with folks that are, whether I'm involved or not, that's irrelevant. Let's just say I'm not, but when I hear it from folks that, we had a difficult time going through the process. It was very expensive. It was very time consuming. And Brent, you were in that private sector.
Absolutely.
You wore that hat. And, and Brent's as polite and respectful and as diplomatic as anybody, but I'm sure at times you probably had levels of frustration coming to the meetings and what all was being required. And I think what I've heard, and I'm not trying to put words in anybody else's mouth, and I think I've kind of heard Chuck say some of this stuff, is that we want the process, and I've heard the mayor and I, we had a conversation early on, not just with planning and zoning, but every department within the city, we're in the customer service business, really, and we work for the citizens of Georgetown, whether they're citizens of Georgetown or their prospective businesses that are looking to come to this community. We want them to be treated like customers. And when those businesses do come to this community, there are a lot of tax revenues that we benefit from that. And if the city benefits from it, then the citizens benefit from it. So the more revenue we can receive because that business decided to come to Georgetown because this is a good place to do business, then it helps us to try to keep the cost to our citizens that live here down, whether it's their property taxes or it's their insurance tax or whatever that may be. We can operate better off of the income from the businesses. So I guess that's kind of the way that I see it, and maybe some others have seen it, and I certainly have heard that from other council members, and I think that's been the belief of many on the council. So anyway, at the end of the day, at least from my perspective, I want to be fair and somewhat easy to deal with. And I'm not saying rubber stamp anything. I mean, we have certain standards that we want. We want this to be the nicest community we can have. The sign ordinance kind of comes to mind, and I know a lot of folks are either in the real estate business or have been impacted by this, but that sign ordinance was 50 to 60 pages long. It was a huge ordinance. There was no way that we could have comprehended everything in it. And I'm not sure anybody on your staff,
I think they did.
Knew it verbatim anyway. I know not. I mean, we've been asking too much. But that was something that we all talked about. And I think the council was pretty united on that. Look, we don't understand everything in here, but we want to give businesses the benefit of the doubt. We want the community to look as nice as it can possibly look, but we also we understand that businesses have certain needs, and signage is important to those businesses, and it can be a make or break for a particular business. And I guess for me, I'm always cautious whenever we're making a change like this. Not that I have any doubts with you all or your staff, but I just don't want to make a mistake that ends up costing us significantly because we didn't we didn't get this deal. And I'll give an example of that, okay? Lexus would be the best example you could look at. There were certain things that this council was being asked to do at certain times during the previous administration. I'm not saying the previous mayor was in favor of it or not, but had we done those things, not knowing that Lexus was potentially going to come to this community, we wouldn't have landed Lexus. And I know that's the biggest of the big. That was the grand slam. But there are other things that are certainly below that sometimes we don't even realize. And I'm just always cautious about things like this. And, think if we had done something with the payroll tax and Lexus said, well, we're going somewhere else. We're not going to build the first Lexus in Georgetown, Kentucky, here in the United States. That could have happened. And those discussions, as you all know, that were on the council, those conversations took place.
Yep.
And it could have been devastating, because now they're locked into this community probably for the next 20 to 25 years. Now, because of that, we have BCTC that's going to be starting construction. We have a $40 million off-ramp coming off the interstate. It's just a huge domino effect. And again, I'm giving you the biggest example of them all, probably. But I think it's relevant. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor. I don't have the best answer for you, but I wanted to share a little bit of history, if nothing else.
Good, I appreciate that. There's probably a pretty big difference between a minor subdivision plat being done digitally and a payroll tax increase.
Absolutely.
Just in relative terms.
Absolutely.
But point's well taken. Yes, ma'am.
I want to try to understand this, and I'm trying to not make it complicated or anything like that, but if I'm understanding this correctly, we've had a GIS system how long?
20 years?
20 years?
Yeah, 20.
And so, 20 years. So what you're doing now is trying to connect and make it, to me, it sounds like it would be more efficient for the surveyors and the engineers by adding what they're doing in order to make it more compact, because it's going like HD digital, which is where we are futuristically going. And what David said about the big is right. That's major. It doesn't even affect the minor that they're talking about. And if you heard what they said, it really doesn't affect the city as much as it does the county, because the city already comes in and they already have all of those little connecting things that they can do.
Okay.
So they're not really probably going to be that much going to affect those people that much. Do you see what I'm saying?
I totally do, and obviously I gave you the biggest example I could
Right.
probably give you, but I've heard other council members talk about the smaller business owner, and sometimes $500 or $1,000 can make a big difference to a very small business owner that's trying to get established or open a business here in this community, and somebody that could grow. You'd never know, they start off small, but you just never know what they're going to be in 5 or 10 years. So, I don't know. I mean,
Is this more efficient as to what you guys are trying to do with just like at the last minute you just decided to throw the minor plat in there when you were making these changes for the major? Is that what you were kind of doing?
Well, I think it would get us that information that we're not getting currently, or we're not required to, or the applicant's not required to provide. I mean, we may be asking and getting it anyway, but we've had the digital ordinance since 2003, I think, so almost 12 years. We're just adding a few extra layers, some stormwater structure, some layers that the city really needs to identify where the stormwater structures are, for that, for us to be able to map that stuff in the future. Mm-hmm. And then adding the minors in is really to pick up those developments that, really we need to see the digital submittal on, that are being drawn on CAD anyway. Just making sure it's in there and that we get them, and that we get them in this format. So yeah, it is making it more efficient to be able to map this stuff in the future. If we get it as development occurs, they're doing the drawings anyway. Well, we need it in this format, and we need these layers.
Do you think it's customer friendly?
I don't think it's any applicant developer that's coming with a project, I think it's probably expected that they need to provide, these, it's not adding an additional burden beyond what's required in our subdivision development regulations on the plans anyway. But it just, we need the digital. It's adding the requirement of the digital submittal with minors. I don't think it's unfriendly. I don't want to say it's customer friendly because you're asking for something that maybe wasn't asked for before. But I think engineers that work in this county or that will be working in the county in the future, expect to provide this type of information.
But it will be more beneficial.
It will
That's
be
the
more
key right there.
beneficial,
That's
and it
the
will
key
be
to the city.
required by the applicants rather than
Right.
by, city taxpayers
Right.
maybe to pay for in the future.
So Joe, right, are we keying some of that information in ourselves right now? Is that the information that you're asking for, are we manually doing that
Yes.
ourselves?
Some of the, mainly the minor subdivisions out in the county, but yeah, some minor development plan information. If they don't provide it, then yeah, we have to do it.
I mean, I don't know that this is a huge, I guess,
It's just a requirement now.
situation, but I mean, I can go along with it. I just, I wanted to understand a little bit better, and I wanted to get the opinion of an engineer outside of this community that, to see what their thoughts were, and certainly I respect both of your opinions.
And
I'm one of 8. I mean, I don't like the additional cost on anybody for anything, but I understand the situation a little bit.
And we can continue to work on the sign ordinance as well.
Oh, not ready.
I know
Not
we
right now.
amended it once. I think, that was 12 years in the making, had a lot of parties involved. I think that's how it got so long.
Yeah.
Too many.
Well, if nothing else, I guess I just wanted to kind of share that with you all. And the mayor, like I said, you and I talked about that earlier on. That was one of the concerns you had when you came into office. So I think that, if we can just kind of put it out there and we make people aware of it, I guess that's enough for me right now.
While we have the experts here, are there any further questions from the council?
I don't really have any questions. I have a few comments. If you're ready for that.
Well, at some point, we'll get a motion and a second, if a motion and a second exist, and then we'll be a
First reading.
first reading.
It's first reading,
We're just
yeah.
first reading?
Because we had to redo a lot of that, yeah.
You city folks, don't
You
vote
city
on the
folks.
second
No.
one.
Silly wabbit.
Excuse me, Kyle, did you have? Can I make a comment? If you would, and then.
Is it
and then we'll
customer
ask-
friendly?
To who? To the developer or the citizens? The problem is a lot of these new layers are actually stormwater based, and we're required by a permit to map. So either, and the same goes along with signs. So either the developer or the person doing the project who has the CAD file gives us that information, or I send out someone to survey it all in at the taxpayer's expense.
So it would be beneficial.
Yes. All of our work orders and asset management is all going GIS based. So, I mean, this is pinnacle part of our infrastructure, maintenance.
Yes, sir, Joe.
Well, the biggest problem I have is we have two parts of this. You're adding layers and requirements for major developments, new developments. I have no problem with that. You have to do that anyway. It's the striking of the line that says that the minor plats are not exempted anymore. So, and you talked that there's this information that's not there yet, that you're wanting the citizen to pay to get this information for us. So now you got this little guy with the little project who's gonna have his hands cuffed because now he's gotta go hire a professional and pay significantly more for his project to meet this new requirement. I've talked to, most of you know, my brother used to be chairman of planning and zoning. He mentioned it was a significant increase in burden on the citizen or business owner. I talked to another surveyor. I guess he didn't tell me not to mention his name, Tony Justice. He's our Scott County surveyor, okay? He gave me a number. He says it's gonna be 50% increase. So if a job's gonna cost $800, now the citizen's gonna pay $1,200. So if we're doing that work now for the minor plats, why can't we continue to do that work for the minor plats and take some of this burden off of our citizens with these little projects?
I would say because the applicant / developer is doing the drawing anyway. He's doing the
For the
drawing.
little tiny jobs, we're talking about the minor developments?
I would say the majority of them, yeah. I mean,
minor?
who? Hmm? Brent? Am I wrong?
There are very few instances where you might have a small expansion. The original project has been there for 30 years or so. And so all that you have is maybe a paper copy. And so what we have now is the engineer is able to print that original with the new line work added by CAD onto paper. But that's not a full digital situation.
Right, and we'll need that information.
And
we're wanting-
so if I were doing it, I would, once I scanned it into the computer, then I would trace the part, not necessarily the whole project, but the part that I need to show how I'm tying into that. So that could take anywhere from 1 to 4 hours to do that.
But we're wanting the citizen who's doing a little job to pay for that.
Yes.
When now we exempt it, that's my whole hang-up is. We exempt it now, we don't want to exempt it that's being stricken out of this ordinance. That's what I'm against.
Can I ask a question for clarification? What, in your opinion, percentage right now of submissions of minor subdivision plats is a developer or a citizen able to submit it without hiring a professional?
We have had probably 2 or 3 in the 4 years I've been up there.
And they were hand drawings or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And plats are different than plans also.
I maybe used the wrong term, but what we're specifically talking about here, I guess I was under the impression in the majority or perhaps exclusively that they were already required to submit professionally designed drawings for minor subdivision plans. But that all was being asked to be done was to add that requirement to submit them in digital format and tied to the state plan coordinates. I just want to make sure we're
And the LEPP.
all the information is out there correctly. And maybe I have it wrong.
Yeah, and don't forget what Joe said early on too, is he listed the few that would be new to the category. In other words, there's very few things that we don't already require submissions for. Very few things.
I mean, one example of those 4 is probably, occasionally out in the county, the Board of Adjustment gets a case. So there was a landscape business out in the county, I think it was off Leestown Road, that they wanted to see a development plan on. It was out in the county. It was just going to be kind of metal pole with plastic sheeting over it, kind of to grow plants or to, maybe a gravel parking lot. I think that one was one that wasn't professionally drawn because it was required really as part of a conditional use permit. So that might happen. There's probably been maybe, I don't know, I only remember that one and one out by Weisenberger Mill. There was a conditional use permit. I think that's another one that wasn't professionally done, but those were both conditional use permits where they asked to see a development plan.
So are they exempt?
That wasn't, it was part of a conditional use permit. They wanted to know where the parking would be, where everything would be as part of that. So they brought it through us. It wasn't something that would typically require a development plan. There may have been another case on Paynes Depot Road. There was a people complained about a business that was out there. They had to go to Board of Adjustment. They needed to show a drawing. I don't know of any others that were hand drawn. But I mean, any maybe in the past, if I don't know, someone was going to park cars or something, it related to zoning related issues, and typically Board of Adjustment, or if somebody needed to see some information on site, like where are you going to park these cars? You know, it could be drafted or something. I don't, you know, any development plan that comes through has to be professionally done, tied to the state plan coordinates, if it's coming through planning commission.
For me to understand a little better, this ordinance requiring additional digital submissions is going to affect what percentage of your applications?
Probably 5%.
So we're talking about an extremely low number that this is going to apply to.
As far as the minors, yeah, I would say 5% of development plans, more subdivision plats out in the county, because we see a lot of splits out in the county, agricultural splits. So, I mean, those are still professionally prepared, but we don't require digital for minor plats out in the county. So that'll be one that they'll have to. I don't think the digital
specifically within the city limits. So a relatively small change.
Yes, as far as minor plats within the city limits, we see very few. You typically lot consolidations, easement plats, things like that. So.
What about a hairstyle? Sometimes they'll have a home shop.
Mm-hmm.
Would this impact them?
No, I mean that, you know.
They're already having to submit a plan and
mm-hmm.
convert in their garage or whatever the case may be.
They'd have to get a conditional use permit for that, and typically they submit a kind of a written description of their use. There's already a structure there. They're going inside the building. So
They go for the Board of Adjustments?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They may, we don't require that. That's another instance where they can hand draw that, but that's part of Board of Adjustment. That's not really Planning Commission. They typically, with conditional uses and things that go to the Board of Adjustment, they'll hand draw the drawing. If it's something that is, you know, where there's new structures, Board of Adjustment will, you know, put it as a condition of approval. They come through Planning Commission with a full development plan. So then they would have to submit a second development plan with more detail.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, if it only affects 5%, why are we striking the exemption?
I can't answer that question.
I mean, I would say the reason is because, you know, there's all these instances that I laid out of minor development plans where we really need to see the digital submittal. Whether we make it optional and just rely on them to provide it to us, that's up to you all. But I mean, I think really that's, from my perspective, that's why where we need to catch them. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, it really goes back also to what Kyle was saying. The city needs to be able to map all the impervious areas within the city limits for the MS4 permit. And if you exempt those minor plans, then all of a sudden now you don't have that information. So where are you going to get it?
I thought you guys were doing that already.
We do that on some of the plats out in the county, but no, we don't.
Not in the city. If it's only 5%, why are we going to handcuff that little guy and make him go out and hire professionals to do a professional
Well, like I said,
design,
it's
just like a major would have to do?
we're just trying to get the city the information that they need.
that the little guy has to pay for?
Everybody has to pay for it. I talked to Meridian Associates, he said $250.
It depends on the project.
One thing's for sure, we don't have to be unanimous with every council vote. I think we should ask all the questions that we want of these folks. We can have first reading, and then we'll get to a vote, and we can vote any which way we choose to vote. We're not going to agree on this to the point of 100%. Are there any other questions that people have that they need responses from that we haven't already covered? Then why don't we proceed with first reading? And then we can have more questions at the time of the second reading, and the council can vote whatever their feelings might be at that time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
An ordinance amending Section 720 of the Georgetown, Scott County Subdivision and Development Regulations regarding specifications for digital submittals for subdivision plats and developmental plats and requirements for content and format. Now therefore be it ordained by the City of Georgetown, Kentucky as follows. Summary. 1. Forms a standardized approach to the way digital drawing submittals are collected, retrieved, stored, and analyzed to allow the Geographic Information System, GIS, to be as current as possible. 2. Requires major and minor subdivision plats and development plans to be submitted in digital format, which will call for delivery of the digital submittal at the final recording of the plat and certification of the plan. 3. Provides for severability, repeal of inconsistent ordinances, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Publicly introduced and read for the first time April 13th, 2015.
Thank you. So, more opportunities to discuss it in 2 weeks, and we'll go from there. Thank you all.
Bless you.
We could go back up to mayor's comments now, and then we'll assume the regular order of our agenda. A couple of things that I wanted to mention to the council. We've talked about your council email addresses being available to you. Chuck's had his device set up, and I know Polly's had her device set up. We are in receipt of an Attorney General's opinion that strongly suggests that you use your city email addresses and not your personal email addresses. So as your time will allow, if you could get set up on those devices, I think it'll serve you well going forward. Given that we have this Attorney General's opinion, we'll probably establish some point in time, 30 days or 60 days, some reasonable point in time where we stop sending email to your personal addresses and start only using your city assigned address. And I think that's a smart practice and would encourage you all to make that shift. Wanted to give you all a report. I don't think we've had a chance to talk with you in detail about our visit with District 7. You all knew that we were visiting with District 7, and we had a considerable shopping list of things we wanted to talk with them about. The news graphic did an article about what that shopping list looked like. And just, I'll go from memory, but some of the more important ones that I thought you would like to hear an update on. We asked them about the condition of Cherry Blossom. Cherry Blossom drastically needs repaving, particularly in light of the Lexus plant coming on board later this fall and our interstate exchange being completed. What we were told is District 7's plans are to resurface Cherry Blossom after the interchange is completed. Knowing that the interchange is supposed to be complete late next fall, I asked if that meant we were going to wait 2 years to get Cherry Blossom paved, because that was not the answer we wanted to hear. They assured us that they would, as much as they could, they would time the paving of Cherry Blossom to coincide with the completion of the bypass, which would put Cherry Blossom paved next year. That still doesn't suit a lot of people who are looking at the condition of Cherry Blossom today. We've expressed our concern to District 7 that we'd like see that project fast-tracked and perhaps done even before the plant dedication this fall. I would assume that there'll be some political pressures in other directions for that same outcome, but those are the answers that we received. We did ask for them to help us at least get Cherry Blossom swept, because there's so much gravel in the turn lanes, it's dangerous. You can skid on the crumbs. And they did assure us that they would be working on those issues. We talked with them at length about the bridge on Clayton, Old Lemons Mill, that has been reduced to 8 tons. We made a very strong point with them about the way that affected us operationally with fire trucks, garbage trucks, and school buses. They're aware of our concern in that regard. Even though we own the bridge, we think that it will be eligible for state improvements in about a year.
It's already in their plan for replacement, is what they told us.
Already in their plan. So we're optimistic that within a year, maybe just slightly longer, we can have that bridge repaired at state expense rather than our expense. So that was some positive. We talked at length, Ms. Conway and Ms. Eardley, about sidewalks on West Main Street and the danger that we saw. We also talked at length about the need for sidewalks to Scott County High School and how many times we've all seen students walking on the grass or the road coming in from the high school. Each of those need attention. They indicated to us that our best opportunity for their assistance with a sidewalk project of the nature of West Main is when it is connected to a larger project, a repaving project, something of that nature. They're aware of our concerns. They were going to take a look at photographs, do some quick survey work. They wanted to at least get used to what the problem was. So we're on the same page about the need. Whether or not we can tie it to a larger project and possibly get state assistance, we're going to have to play that out just a little bit. We did get some information on another program that we can...
Safe Routes to Schools.
Safe Routes to the Schools program that we might be able to utilize to help us with our problem going out towards Scott County High School. So those things were discussed. We talked about both the Bridge Street Bridge being closed and our concerns about that. We talked about the bridge over Paris Pike, and that so we put it on their radar screen. We're aware that Norfolk Southern is going to put it on their railroads, their radar screen, their railroad screen, their radar screen as well. We've also got a number of other traffic problems in the city that the prior council has wrestled with and are familiar with. We'll have to expose the new council members to some of these issues that may require right in, right out solutions that work for traffic but don't always make property owners happy. And we're evaluating what some of those look like, in particular at Southgate, as you come into town toward the bypass. Between Southgate and the bypass, there's just not enough room.
Nope.
So the stack lane for the bypass backs up and begins to interfere with Southgate. What the state suggested is that we consider a right in and right out of Southgate only. That it's effective at alleviating property or traffic issues. Not very good at making property owners happy.
In fact, you all should know, it's a matter of public record that actually
we've been sued
by
one of those property owners who are already unhappy with the traffic flow and our actions. We talked with them about our ongoing project to alleviate traffic in front of Walmart, where we're trying to work out a right into Walmart and a right out of Walmart for a second entrance to Walmart. So that's another right in, right out. The third right in and right out that we talked about involves Old Oxford Pike,
Yeah.
where it's so much trouble to turn out at Applebee's there.
Take a ride on it.
And that traffic backs up. Right in, right out solutions take a lot of careful preparation and a lot of discussion because they affect traffic patterns in front of people's businesses. But we've at least put those on the table. We've gotten their feedback, and we all probably need to drive around and take a look at some of these proposed right in, right out opportunities. We talked about, in a few minutes, under a different part of the agenda, I'll have Kyle address our discussion about Derby Estate stormwater. That was on our agenda, but we have that styled separately on the agenda. So Kyle can address those. We talked about, the nice thing is every issue we brought up, they were pulling up aerial photographs on iPads, and we were beaming down on the plans and traffic counts and all of the information. We looked at Cardinal Drive and all the problems on Cardinal Drive. For those of you that are not aware, school rush hour traffic on Cardinal Drive is a nightmare.
Yep.
On both ends.
Yeah.
Even on the long lick end.
Yes.
And in fact, we've had 2 or 3 crossing guards injured on Cardinal Drive, which begins to be a real question for the city. We're providing that as a courtesy to the school system because our citizens are involved. But if we have crossing guards injured while doing this work, the workers' comp claims are falling to the city. And our gesture of goodwill for the school system can cost us real money on our workers' compensation rates. So there's a complexity to some of these things that we have to be aware of. And our desire to be good partners with the school district, we may have to reevaluate what we can provide for them if we're bearing the brunt of those workers' compensation costs. What else was on it? Dan, you wrote the article about the shopping list. What have we left off?
Help us out here.
Do you write? That's handy.
I think you covered that.
I think those are the highlights of the ones that we did cover. It was a productive conversation. They've got some more information they need to get back to us, and we told them we'd evaluate some of these right-in, right-outs.
We did ask for a status update on the final leg of the bypass as well.
Yeah, we asked about the final leg of the bypass, but funding issues are so murky today, particularly given that the wholesale price of gasoline fell so quickly and the gas tax fell so quickly. We've already, even though there was an action taken late in the session of the General Assembly, we've already lost significant funding from this year's municipal aid program. So the last leg of the bypass, its timing will be affected by a rewrite of the 6-year plan, given the reduced revenues that are available. Yes, sir, Kyle, what did we leave out?
They're in the right-of-way acquisition phase, which should start in June or May, and it's 2+ years for construction.
And hope that doesn't slip. Want to make the council aware, we've talked about this before, but April the 22nd, which is next Wednesday, is Earth Day. And the 3 cities in Scott County, Georgetown, Stamford Ground, and Sadieville, have partnered with the County of Scott and
Bluegrass Green Source.
Bluegrass Green Source, thank you. Bluegrass Green Source is our partner. It used to be Bluegrass Pride, now Bluegrass Green Source.
Yeah.
We will have a specific Earth Day activity on Wednesday of next week, the 22nd, from 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock. We're going to have volunteers meet us here at City Hall. We'll have, I think it's going to be a police group, maybe a fire group. If there's not, there will be now. We'll have,
There's your group right there.
we'll have City Hall employees, we're going to have church groups, and our intention is to do as much as we can about cleaning up Main Street during this symbolic 2 hours during lunch hour. We know that midday of a work day isn't the best day to clean the streets, but that's when Earth Day is. So there will be simultaneous activities in Stamping Ground in Sadieville. What our intention is to make Earth Day simply the kickoff for a whole series of summer activities related to cleaning up the community. Some will start before Earth Day. A great example, we've been approached by Crossroads Christian Church, the pastor is Brad Stone, and they're having a Serve the City Day for their congregation. And I'm going to join them Saturday morning at their church, and then we're going to probably bring 50 congregation members to a couple of projects. And what we've decided we want that church group to help us with is clean up the Welcome to Georgetown signs. We have some of them that need attention.
David loved that, won't you, Dave?
Cleaning up.
good.
Beautification.
Some plant beautification. And these people want to be a part of helping the city.
That's good.
So we can help them do that. We hope to invite other community groups, Boy Scout groups, church groups, to pick other Saturdays, and we think we can help them with a slate of activities. So we'll have people working on your behalf this Saturday. We'll kick off Earth Day next Wednesday, the 22nd, and then we'll have educational programs in the schools. Linda Wise has been working closely with the Bluegrass Green Source folks about starting a recycling program for the schools that are in Georgetown. We're looking at other scenarios for a recycling test program, but we figure we'll start with the schools, and that's a great way for us to get started. So if any of you are around and you've got some gloves and a dirty t-shirt, join us on Wednesday the 22nd, and we'll be cleaning up Main Street. We'd be glad to have you. And if you have any other community groups or clubs you're a part of that would like to do something, we'd be glad to work with you.
Speaking of the church, the Crossroad, Northside does Rake Day on a Sunday, usually in October, and they go throughout the community. One year they painted the fire hydrants downtown and stuff. They help build ramps, so you can put them down if you have any projects you need later on this fall.
Okay.
I guarantee they'll help on that.
Good.
And I got one more question, and it might be out of line, but the flooding that we had out there by Arby's last week,
Yes, sir.
the mound of dirt, is that in a flood zone where they put that dirt in there? I had 3 people that lives in the trailer park, because 2 of them works with me,
Yeah.
and I told them I didn't know the answer, but I would ask that question since we're doing all this other stuff.
You know, I think many of us have watched that field beside Arby's be altered for the last year and wondered what the outcome would be.
Well, the outcome was it turned water from the back end around to Arby's is what it's done, I think, personally, but.
We saw the outcome.
Yeah. But I told them I'd ask that question, and we'll get an answer on that, I'm assuming, sometime, but.
Have you got anything to add tonight, or would you rather?
Brent's our floodplain coordinator, so he can probably.
Why don't you go?
Brent Combs is our floodplain coordinator, so he's probably a little more in knowing about that area. It's most likely in the 100-year floodplain zone. I mean, I'm not 100% on the rules and regs for filling in a floodplain, but it usually involves no net increase in fill. So if you move 100 cubic yards, you can put back in 100 cubic yards, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly 100% on the specifics, but typically when a building goes in, it needs to be 1 foot of freeboard above the 100-year flood elevation. As to how far that flood elevation goes, I'm not entirely sure.
Well, it had to be pretty high this time, how high that water got that building
Yeah.
would be.
And this
So.
is a point that Marvin's making, and probably getting a little bit aside, but not that Arby's may not have had flooding in it, because in '97 it had
Yeah.
flooding up
We
to
had that
drive
7
through.
inches at 3 or 4
Yeah.
hours.
But here we go back to another incident where possibility of changing this increased the amount of flow that went onto somebody else's property. And it went across that bridge or across the bottom where Arby's is, and that's only, I've lived out there my whole entire life. And it's only the second time in all of these years that that's gone over there. And we've had more than that amount of rain. Now that was a pretty good amount of rain, but we've had more than that again. So there again, why are we not watching? And I'm just saying, you know, general question. Why are we not watching what one person is doing? Because you know it's going to force water off onto somebody else.
I'm sure it went through all the proper planning and zoning
Well, then
procedures.
something's wrong with the proper planning.
Well, here's the other thing
and
you're not
zoning.
thinking about. The watershed for that part of the Elkhorn is immense. The northern counties got a lot more rain than we did, and they pushed all of their water down on us. So it's not just what rain we get here, is what I'm
understand
saying.
that.
It's a collective effort from the entire watershed.
I understand that, but we're having this over and over, that this development is now pushing onto this development. And that was, we all know that was a low spot, that's had water issues over the year, because the trailer park behind, I've lived there my whole entire life, trailer park behind has been flooded several times. But we allowed another piece of property that's right there to add to it, just like we did out here in Dominion, just like it's done now in Derby Estates, and it's over and over and over and over. So what are we missing?
Well, a lot of those guidelines and design requirements for floodplain construction come directly from FEMA. So I don't know if we have, is that incorrect?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, I don't, that particular site, that's one reason why we tried to get the sunset clause passed, because that was approved previously. I mean, that's an old development plan that kind of guided that approval. But I'm sure they did go through all the proper floodplain permitting process. They may have done a flood study. I don't know. I don't have the answer for you. I'll have to ask Brent in the morning. But that was a situation where the development plan was approved at some point in the past. I think it was 9-10 years ago. And they did, I know they did do the flood studies, and they did, I mean, they were required to get the state floodplain permit and a local permit. So, but I didn't look at the studies. I'll have to ask Brent for the specifics.
I might understand, to be honest with you, I might understand how Frankfurt might have given them to it, but I don't understand how anybody locally would have checked off on that, knowing what it's done here, all these years of history behind it. And maybe that's it. Somebody's not there to see that knows the history behind of watching how the creek flows and what's going on all the years. But I just don't understand how it ever got approved. And like Marvin said, it's much, much, much higher now than what it used to be over there next to that.
Yeah, it's higher along the edge of the creek, but it's coming in around.
Oh, yeah.
Ma'am, that was the
That
issue.
had a-
That was the issue, I think.
Yeah, that had a cap on it that didn't completely cover that cap, so all of that has been built up. And then if you look even how it's built up into the creek, it didn't even allow for it to road to come over and go that way. It allowed it to road come right into Arby's, which is not fair to Arby's. Now they're closed for 2 months or however long.
Address your concern generally. That's something that came up even today in a conversation that we had about more closely monitoring the effect of one development on the other, or even down to one house upon another.
Yeah.
It's something that we're actively thinking about.
I mean, we have to, because we're seeing it way, 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 way too much, and you know, it's becoming too commonplace. And who's picking up the bill for it? Where we're not catching it ahead is coming back to the city to pick up the bill for it, and then all citizens are paying for it later. So we have to do a better job than what we're doing, because we failed on what we're supposed to be doing.
Joe, is there something ultimately going to be built on that property that you're aware of?
I've heard a restaurant, but the plans, the development plan that was approved was for a tire store. That location.
And to Karen's point, it's not only from one development to the next. What we saw in the latest rainstorm event are problems within neighborhoods that are currently under development, that may have piles of dirt that may be on the building lot where they're supposed to be, or the piles of dirt may be over in a developer's area where they're not supposed to be. And it is, in some cases, the erosion from those piles of dirt that are causing some of the problem, that are diverting water to the wrong places and causing problems that are greater than what they should be. That's our job, collectively, between city and the county, to evaluate those circumstances and hold builders and developers' behavior in line. We've got work to do in that regard. We've got one code enforcement officer for Georgetown and Scott County. Those are the realities that if we're gonna rebuild some systems, and we're gonna try and get better protections in place from these things, but we have some work to do. Thank you. Two other quick things under my report, and then we'll get to the rest of the agenda. Sorry about this. It's one of those nights. I had mentioned to you all before that we had gotten notification from HUD that our local housing authority had been designated, had made the transition from substandard all the way to high performer. And we've gotten formal documentation now that our housing authority has been designated a high performer by HUD, which is, according to the HUD folks, the turnaround happened in record time from their perspective. Our last housing authority meeting, we met with folks from HUD outlining a plan by which we will intend to stay as a high performer. It's a transition plan from getting back to high performer status to maintaining the high performer status. So just wanted y'all to know that is ongoing and working well. Also, they made some reference to the Horsey 100 bicycle event. It's become one of the signature events for Georgetown. We're really proud to have it originate in this community. We've been working on an issue with some of the Horsey 100 vendors. There's only a handful of vendors that come in for this Horsey 100. It's a one-day event, and some of the vendors were having to spend a fair amount of money with their CPAs to get our business license forms filled out. So in the interest of promoting the Horsey 100 and maintaining the vendors' interest in being here, we've worked with the Revenue Commission to develop a very straightforward form that these vendors can fill out, probably a flat $10 fee rather than having them fill out paperwork and returns for it. Just wanted y'all to know that in an effort to keep things business friendly and folks come into the community, let's make their experience easy. And we've been working on those things. There's more I could talk about, but I'm going to stop, given that it's almost 8 o'clock and we have lots of things yet to do. Let's see, item 8 on your agenda is first reading of the cable franchise ordinance. Oh, you mean the things I skipped over on the agenda?
Well,
Actually, the item listed under my section, police accommodation, Chief Bossy would like to hold that until our next meeting. We do have an executive order reappointing Rich Archey to the Board of Ethics. That's a reappointment that is in your packet. It's a straightforward executive order. I don't think it has to be read in its entirety. It is my reappointing Mr. Rich Archey to the Board of Ethics. Would you like to, we can have a motion and a vote, or we can read it for you. Motion's been made.
Second.
Marvin can have it.
Connie's got it.
I'll take it.
Seconded, Connie. Mark? And if there are no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now, let's go to the first reading of the cable franchise ordinance. And on this one, folks, we've done most of the heavy lifting. We've done the negotiating, we've gotten through the franchise agreements, and now we're ready for the first reading of the ordinance.
This is identical to, with the change, and I tweaked the title, but other than that, it's identical to the ordinance that we approved in the resolution.
An ordinance providing for grant of a non-exclusive cable television service franchise. Summary. Establishes terms and conditions for application for the grant of a non-exclusive franchise for the placement of facilities for the provision of cable television service within the confines of the city of Georgetown for a period not to exceed 9 years. Said franchise providing for compliance with applicable laws and regulations, full financial and shareholder disclosure for new franchises only, indemnification by the franchise guarantee, and adequate insurance coverage, and 2 performance bonds. Establishes in the event Kentucky law is changed to authorize a local franchise fee. A franchise fee equal to 5% of grantee's gross revenue. Establishes requirements for completing construction, providing data, testing the system and meeting minimum operational standards, penalties for violations of this ordinance, conditions of road occupancy, use of poles and construction standards, minimum requirements for extending the system access to communications facilities, public educational and government access channels, emergency alert override antenna switches, standby power, testing and analyzing the system, and proof of performance. Consumer services standards, billing practices, complaint procedures, refunds to subscribers for failure of services, require approval for a transfer of control, establishes standards and procedures for forfeiture of the franchise, valuation of the system, and foreclosure and receivership provisions, reserves government rights in the franchise, requires assurances of non-description and equal opportunity in employment and protection of subscriber privacy, provides for governance by state law, severability of provisions, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street. Introduced and publicly read for the first time, April 13th, 2015.
Thank you. That will constitute first reading. And just, it's on our agenda, but just for the public's understanding, the cable franchise ordinance was sponsored by Ms. Singer-Early. The prior ordinance on the amendment to the subdivision regulation ordinance was sponsored by Ms. Tackett. We appreciate council members' willingness to sponsor ordinances to get them on the table for discussion, and we appreciate that. It doesn't, you can still vote against ordinances that you sponsored, but they do need to be brought to the table, and that's handy. Item 9 on your agenda. I'm delighted to bring you first reading of the post-construction stormwater ordinance. Just for council's recollection, we've talked about this. We've had presentations from Kyle and Andrew from Strand Engineering has helped us with these presentations. We've provided you with a draft ordinance a couple of weeks ago. We've provided you with written memorandums addressing the questions that Mark had and Polly had. And since then, we've sent you an updated ordinance. And always happy on something of this complexity to offer workshop meetings. But there has been a fair amount of time for us to review this issue. We may still elect to take more time. But we are at the point this evening, since we have sent you all answers to questions and updated ordinances, we have not received additional questions yet. We understand that you all still may have additional questions and concerns. We're always happy to hear those. But I believe we're ready tonight for first reading of that ordinance. And Mr. Thompson sponsored this ordinance.
And Ms. Tackett.
And Ms. Tackett. We have dual sponsors. Good.
An ordinance related to stormwater post-construction maintenance within the city of Georgetown and amending various ordinances to comply with these provisions. Summary. repeals and reenacts Section 1105 of the Georgetown Scott County Subdivision and Development Regulations entitled Stormwater Management. Such reenactments sets forth the authority, purpose, and applicability for these changes, establishes a stormwater best practice manual, sets requirements for stormwater management plan approval, requires a performance security or bond be issued prior to permit issuance, sets the parameters for long-term maintenance of stormwater best management practices, provides for post-construction inspections, sets guidelines and procedures for the enforcement of these reenactments, establishes an appeal process for violators, sets the parameters for violations deemed a public nuisance, and establishes that the remedies listed are not exclusive. Renames Chapter 19, Article 5 of the Georgetown Code of Ordinances as Stormwater, recodifies stormwater-related ordinances under Chapter 19, Article 5, amends Ordinance Number 14-021 to reflect Chapter 19 name change, provides for severability of provisions, repeal of inconsistent laws, and an effective date upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky. Introduced and publicly read for the first time April 13th, 2015.
Thank you. That will constitute our first reading, but to emphasize for the council, you've been sent a lot of material. If you have questions about that material, please get a hold of either Kyle or Andrew or myself. Or if you get a hold of me, I'll hand you off to Kyle or Andrew. And if after you review your materials again, you wish to have a workshop, we're happy to schedule that for you. Absent specific questions or request for a workshop, we would anticipate having second reading of the ordinance at our last council meeting in April. That schedule is not etched in stone. This is your all's ordinance, and we'll work it until we may never be completely comfortable with it, but we'll work it until we get as comfortable as we can.
And if you all want, I can kind of quickly walk us through any of the provisions that you have questions about. It is a lot, as the mayor said, to digest. So I'll leave that up to you if you want me to walk through the whole thing or walk through a particular sticky provision or whatever. So
we'll walk through each of the sections with you. If whatever the council's wishes are tonight, we want to do it in a way that meets your needs.
I thought the board was a really good idea. The board to monitor it. I thought that was really smart, and I think that'll be helpful to stay on top of it. Yeah. That's good.
any questions?
No questions this time. Look it over and let us know how we can help with your understanding. Okay. Also under the city engineer, Andrew.
Kyle.
I was messing with you. I called you Andrew.
Oh, well, everybody does.
If you could give us an update on Derby Estates.
I don't think so. I think you're good. Sorry. Okay. Derby Estates. Project Area 1 in Derby Estates includes the culvert under South Bold Forbes. This is not the swale between Timtail and Donerail. The module block wing wall abutments have failed in the past month. So we have modular block falling in the creek. So that needs to be fixed immediately. If we don't, it'll be further damage to the surrounding area and actually possible damage to the road there. The plan, specifications, and bid package will take about a week to get prepared. And in Stacy's budget amendment, we have $55,000 allocated for this project. So that's just an update on that. The second, Project Area 2, which is the flooding between Donerail Drive and Tim Tam Trail. As the mayor said, we all went to a meeting with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and they did not indicate that they would financially assist the city with the project. What they did indicate is that they would ensure that the proper vegetation gets established and maintained within the state right-of-way. As we've said in a previous meeting, our engineer's model draws parallels with the Transportation Cabinet's models and does not show a definitive correlation between roadway construction and flooding. And as a reminder, the current construction estimate for this project is approximately $260,000, plus an original estimated $100,000 utility relocation cost. Now, I know that's high, so that this week I'm meeting with a representative from Owen Electric to try and nail down an exact cost on what that would be. So that is my update for Derby Estates.
Previous council had instructed Kyle to get with the state to see if there was any financial relief on some things in Derby Estates. The residents of Derby Estates will tell you that they witnessed the water flow change after the construction of the bypass. While we were in our meeting, the gentleman who did the calculations on this area pulled up the maps, went through the calculations, verified his calculations, and he is convinced, and actually they mirror the engineering calculations that Kyle did, and shows that there's probably not a substantial influence from the bypass. It does appear, based on their observations, and I believe, Kyle, your observations, that as the vegetation is growing in some, there might be a slight reduction in the amount of water runoff. And they're still holding to that story. So they have politely declined our request for any financial assistance on that particular repair. The council's instructed us to ask. We asked and we didn't get very far. The wing wall, the culvert though was a surprise, where the wing walls have completely collapsed into the structure, and we don't have much choice but to fix that as soon as possible. Fortunately, working with Stacy and the budget amendment that she's prepared with the Finance Committee, can provide the funds to make that emergency repair. Any questions for Kyle? Yes, sir.
Kyle, you talking about on electric, the cost of moving the lines. If they put those lines in the middle where that swell should have been, to me that's the wrong place for them to put the lines anyway.
I agree. The problem is our drainage easement coincides with their easement. So at technical review committee meetings with planning and zoning that I go to, I'm always looking out for making sure that those lines cross at 90s or an angle instead of run inside and parallel. And I think there'll be an update to the subdivision regs hopefully in the near future. And that's something I think we should consider.
Not only that, but we have an ordinance akin to a franchise ordinance, I don't know if it actually is, which specifically states that in the event that we require lines to be moved, we're responsible for paying for it.
So unfortunately, that easement situation has both running together.
Yeah.
We didn't help ourselves there.
Yeah.
Mark, did you have a question?
Two questions. Going back to item number 2, the flooding. Can you give me the two numbers again, the approximate cost?
$260,000. That's for the actual construction of the project. The $100,000 was an initial engineering estimate. I mean, it's an educated guess at that point. So this week, actually Thursday, I believe, I'm meeting with a representative from Owen Electric who's going to prepare a cost estimate.
Which would be in addition to the $260,000, or would it be included in the $260,000?
It would be above the $260,000, but hopefully under that 100,000 extra. So together, the estimate was 360. When you take out 100,000 for estimated utility costs, that's where we got that from.
And I know I'm jumping ahead here, and I don't mean to do that, but I know we haven't heard about this project in several months now. Let's just say hypothetically that we did that. And I'm not saying we're going to, because again, I'm one of 8. I don't know what the other 7 will want to do. But if the city were to pick up that cost, to fix that issue, does that fix the issue, or do you think we've got the same issue that pops back up 2 or 3 years down the road?
The plan is to take an existing swale that's not big enough and create it so it will carry the capacity of the 100-year storm. Will there be rain events greater than the 100-year storm? Maybe. But it will be designed per most engineering design standards to handle as much water as it possibly can. The problem is we have a 10-foot wide drainage easement, and the solution to that was run a 30-inch pipe underground underneath of the swale. So when that pipe flows full, the excess water will actually flow down the swale and not over top at the 100-year storm event.
Second question would be, I know late last year we were talking about Willow Lane, and I'm not trying to bring up something that's not on the agenda, but it's a similar issue.
The problem still exists. Go ahead.
I mean, we've got Willow Lane, we've got Derby Estates. How many more of these, are you aware of any other of these type issues?
Downtown Broadway?
Well, I mean, we know about that, or most of us do.
Maddox Street.
All of the entire downtown.
I would say most of the older sections of town that use swales as a conveyance method, they all need to be retrenched, all of them.
So we've got multiple.
I mean, if you go drive down through Indian Hills and look at their trenches, I mean, all of the pipes are pretty much half full of sediment, just with grass. They need to, every single trench needs to be dug out. You know, and this is part of that post-construction maintenance. You know, we're trying to hold, you know, in this case, property owners responsible for things that are on their property. So it comes down to maintenance, and we don't have a lot of bodies to perform maintenance.
But the issue with that is, though, this is stormwater ordinance that we're talking about only deals with future
Correct.
developments, not existing.
Correct. So we're trying to stop the bleeding now, I guess, is the way to look at it.
Thanks.
The other real issue that we've discovered in Derby Estates, and this is going to be problematic, is a number of the residents have built privacy fences that go down into the easements.
They've extended their property lines a little bit.
They're encroaching on drainage easements, and it's made very beautiful and very private backyards, but it's exacerbated the drainage problems. There's a point when we may have to go in and enforce fence lines staying outside of easements. And there are lots of yards that have fences where they're not supposed to be. And that's just difficult, but we have a responsibility for the stormwater, and if those fences are changing the flow of that stormwater or not letting water get to an easement, that's yet another issue that we'll be bringing to you.
It's hard for us to justify spending $360,000 when there are impediments that are in the way. You know, if we are going to sometime make a commitment, then everybody needs to make a commitment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we'll make some people unhappy, but it's a large-scale problem, and it's going to require large-scale solutions, and these fences are a part of the problem. So I just want you all to be aware of each of these things and all the layers to them as we bring them to you. Some are difficult.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Kyle on Derby Estates? Then we have 3 change orders for our police department building. We're getting very close to this being a final project, but we do have 3 change orders to discuss with you this evening, Kyle.
Well, we actually have 2 change orders and 1 municipal order, and I'll explain the reason to that in a minute. The first, 100-12, is a change order. Dan Ambergy's Plumbing submitted a claim at the March 10th management meeting with a time extension of 5 adverse weather days, which turns into 7 calendar days. This all occurred during that below freezing period of time. Therefore, the date of substantial completion for this police station will be moved to Wednesday, July 29th. I'm sorry. That's
Motion for that.
there's no extra cost involved with this.
Motion.
Motion. Second.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Yes, sir. Connie and I.
Oh, Connie here. Okay, good. Since that does not involve money, we can do that one pretty simply. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
That's why we
Doesn't
made the
cost,
motion
it's
real
easy
quick,
to do.
okay?
Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you. The next one is a municipal order for the use of contingency funds. We were reviewing the audiovisual part of the bid package that the contractor submitted, and some of the electronics were not quite up to what the police department requires for their use. So what we're doing here is we are taking some of that AV equipment out of the bid in a later change order. But this municipal order is to order equipment at a significantly discounted price. Quotes were received from 3 companies by the police department and provided to me. And the lowest winning bid was about $9,200. So this is approving that $9,200 to be spent for AV equipment out of our contingency fund.
Chief Bon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Chief Bossy had an opportunity to discuss this change with the police committee this evening. Police committee met right before council meeting. So, Chief, you like?
I think this was another one of those cuts that we looked at in the very beginning of the building, that we reduced a lot of the amenities that we had for the building. My recommendation is, this is the community room for the community. We ought to have this is where we'll be drawing people into Georgetown. We probably ought to have a good, the equipment that they had was not even in production anymore. So luckily, Captain Swanigan found that in the contract, or we would have had literally our presentations would have been to roll a cart in with a little projector. That was their AV option for us. So I think we're better than that.
Motion.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the change order concerning the audio visual equipment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you,
Kyle.
Council.
One more.
All right, the last change order is 100-13. This change order actually involves some credits to us as well as some expense. So the approximately $1,300 charge here would have actually been a lot higher if we hadn't taken out some of that AV equipment. Essentially, this is the enlargement of the community room. Chief and I and the architect, we all thought it was more important to be able to fit more people in that room. We got rid of a storage area and a IT closet. So essentially, did we add 20 more seats? About 20 more bodies can fit in there now. Also, we modified the transaction window in casework. We went from 3 transaction windows to 2. There's just no need for 3. And since Chief was able to get free lockers through U.S. Army, we had to build a concrete pad to step those wooden lockers on so they wouldn't get all wet in the locker rooms. That's what all in total in this $1,200.69 or 126964. I can't talk tonight.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made, Ms. Erdley, seconded, Mr. Lesby. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, council.
You're all done. That's all we have under your category there.
One more.
One more?
Resolution.
Oh, yeah, we have a grant opportunity.
Kyle show.
We would like to have the ability to apply for a CMAQ grant. CMAQ stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program. City of Scott County County of Scott is one of 13 counties that are eligible for this grant. It's a Federal Highway Administration fund source. And we have not applied for one of these in the past, so we should be able to be pretty high on that list. These funds are needed to provide solutions to the traffic issues on Cardinal Drive that the mayor was talking about earlier. Cardinal Drive was not designed for how it's being currently used. We're having accidents, we're having injured traffic control officers. There's a large amount of queuing of vehicles in the street. You know, when you queue all those vehicles, the type of airborne pollution from vehicles is something that might really be able to get us into this grant. About the application, it is an 80-20 match. That said, the application would be for both design and construction. So for us to get a defined estimate of what the project would cost is going to be pretty tough. That's why I will need to hire a consultant to develop this application, come up with a cost estimate. It's something I cannot do within my office at this time. From one consultant I've been speaking with, the initial project estimate could be between $2 and $3 million. That would be between $400,000 and $600,000 of the match. That said, there are 3 parties that could be involved in this process. We have the county and we have the school district. The donation of right-of-way can be used as an in-kind match. So you can think about the possibilities of how we divide up that 20 match. And we would also look at other areas for in-kind matching. The next step forward would be passing this resolution, and the mayor, myself, would need to meet with the judge and the school district to see if they're on board and hire that consultant. This is due April 30th, so we have a very short period of time.
And the benefit of this grant again to us is what? I must have missed it.
The benefit?
Yeah. When you said money, I missed the benefit.
We're looking at adding a third lane to Cardinal Drive.
Okay.
Redesign.
All right.
Yes.
And that's going to help to pay for the redesign of it.
Should pay for all of it.
You're doing the study to justify it.
Well,
Oh, my God.
we want to
That girl.
do the study, the design, and the construction all in this grant.
Okay.
Now, we could apply just for the design. The problem, though, is if you get the money, you have 10 years to do that project. There's no guarantee of you getting federal funding to finish the project. So that's why we'd like to apply for all of it at once.
Makes perfect sense.
So you anticipate 20% of that grant could be $400,000 or $500,000, split 3 different ways, maybe, is what you're saying?
And importantly, Marvin, we're hopeful that a large portion of our match can be in kind.
Right.
If we would be if we go forward with this, if you want us to go forward, the city would be the applicant. We would then bring on the county and the school board as partners. And the match can come from any of those partners. The county has land that might have to, we get right away from. The school would definitely have to contribute land for a right of way. That would begin to eat away at the cash portion of the match. And while this is a little bit of a blank check proposition for you, because we don't know how big the construction project would be and what the council's match would be, we want to emphasize to you that if we're successful, if you give us permission and we're successful with the application, we have to bring it back to you to accept. So you're not locking yourself into this, you're simply giving us permission to go try. although we will spend a few $1,000s because Kyle's going to need some professional help to put the application together. Kyle, your thought, your initial look at that from a consulting engineer was how much?
About 2 to 3 million.
No.
No.
For
him to make the application.
All right. About $3,000 to $5,000.
$3,000 to $5,000, thank you.
And I do have that in my budget.
And you do have that in your
Do have
budget.
that in my budget.
Do you just need a motion, Mayor?
Need a motion?
So,
So be it.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded. If there are no further questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, council.
Stacy.
Good evening. I sent you a rather detailed memo on the budget amendment. Hope you had a chance to read it. So I'm going to, for public purposes, hit the highlights. Basically, we always do a couple of these throughout the year as new projects come up, as line items run over budget, just trying to do some cleanup. So we have a few revenue line items, alcohol fines, which we didn't budget anything at all, and have brought in, thanks to Tracy's hard work, $17,450 in that line item. Penalty and interest on our occupational license fee returns is up $15,000. It's actually more than that over budget, but increasing it by $15,000. And our property tax revenue, we had cut that initially, but with all of the delinquent taxes we've collected on top of the regular, after the reduction, we were actually $20,000 over budget in all of our property tax line items put together. There's a couple of things, such as donations for the annual fireworks show, $5,000 for that. Our sister city activities ran over a little bit that went on in the fall, so we want to take care of those costs. The Main Street, we had withheld a month from them for the month they didn't have a director, so we can decrease that line item by that. As we mentioned, Derby Estates, that is a $55,000 project in the Stormwater Environmental Services Fund. $25,000 of that is going to come from the general fund. As you know, Stormwater, for the most part, is completely funded by general fund. And then Kyle, after looking at his budget, has decided we can use $30,000 out of his current professional services budget for stormwater to make up the difference. Other than that, we had a couple of line items that were kind of running under on insurance. Sometimes as we add vehicles, add some things throughout the year, we get additional premiums, and as well as claims and deductibles as we have insurance claims throughout the year. And finally, the biggest one, I don't know that you all have had a chance. Some of you I know have walked through parts of City Hall. There's some things obvious in this room. There's some building maintenance issues here. And after looking at our wellness fair, we had budgeted for that, but we ended up having money left over from some insurance rebates that we had gotten in the past. We're going to use that for the wellness fair this year. So we wanted to reallocate some of that for City Hall building maintenance and see if we can get some things like get the roof looked at, check on leaks, and some other things in this building that are in dire need. The garbage truck, we talked about a long time ago with the Public Works Committee and the Finance Committee about purchasing a garbage truck out of prior year revenue. So even though we haven't approved that purchase, the actual contract on that purchase yet, I wanted to go ahead and put it in the budget. So when you do get ready to approve that after everything's said and done, it'll already be in the budget and we don't have to take care of that later. Linda's talked to you all year about vehicle maintenance and sanitation, and it has gone over, so it's already over budget, and then wanted to get some more to get through the end of the year. The good thing with the sanitation budget, it is pretty much a self-funding budget, so it is funded from our sanitation fees, and we're taking that out of that contingency line item that we had set aside at the beginning of the year. Other than that, we had a small grant for the fire department that needed to be brought into the budget, and the revenue from Walmart and the engineering study for the ride-in, ride-out. That was money that came in that was paid out for that study. It wasn't anything the city had to pay for, but it did run through our budget, so that's just a cleanup item. Any questions? Sorry, try to talk fast.
Pretty much a house cleaning.
Yeah.
Budget update. Any questions for Stacy?
An ordinance amending the annual budget ordinance for fiscal year July 1, 2014 through June 30, 2015. Summary, general fund, increased alcohol fine revenues, $17,450. Increased penalty interest revenues, $15,000. Increased property tax revenues, $20,000. Increased community service expenditures, $1,469.49. Increased transfers to Environmental Services Fund, $25,000. Increased general government expenditures, $23,500. Environmental Services Fund. Increased prior year revenues, $251,348. Increased capital expenditures, $251,348. Increased transfers from General Fund, $25,000. Increased stormwater expenditures, $25,000. Grant Fund. Increased local grant revenues, $3,200. Increased fire department expenditures, $3,200. Capital Projects Fund. Increased miscellaneous income, $24,000. Increased road construction and improvements expenditures by $24,000. Authorizes the mayor to execute contracts consistent with budget and purchasing policy. All ordinance or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance are hereby repealed. This ordinance shall take effect after its passage and publication according to law. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination in the City Clerk's Office, 100 North Court Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Publicly introduced and read for the first time April 13th, 2015.
Thank you. First reading. We'll vote on that at the next meeting. Moving quickly along through our budget agenda. Struggling tonight, guys, it's late.
That's your bedtime.
Megan.
And we all know I can talk really fast. I have before you a municipal order to approve 3 agreements that will help us to persuade our newly hired police officers, firefighters, and dispatchers to stay with us a little longer. We have lots of situations where we will interview dispatchers and they will say, I'd like to get this job to make the move into the police department. And we often hire firefighters who they like it here, but as soon as Lexington is hiring and paying a lot more money, they're ready to go there. And with our police officers, sometimes there are promotions to the state police department that they just can't pass up. So what we're trying to do is develop these agreements that will at least let us get some time from them to recoup the cost that we spent on their recruitment and their training. For several years now, we've been using a 3-year contract with the police department. It's 3 years from the time they graduate from the academy. We would like to keep that in place, but we're much more competitive now, and we're sometimes able to hire already certified officers. So for those officers, we would like to apply a 2-year limit on the time that we'd like for them to stay without having to repay any cost to us. The other thing we wanted to change in the agreement for the police department was giving the chief of police and the mayor the discretion to eliminate the contract or change the terms of the contract if it so suits the city. An example of that situation may be we have an unhappy employee, a disgruntled employee who wants out of here. They're not doing our department any good, so there may be situations where we want to say, we release you, sure, go ahead. There may be some situations where someone's promoting to the state police, for example, and they could be a terrific resource for us somewhere later down the road at that agency, and they'd like the discretion to be able to say, we want to let you go ahead and go. But we will prorate this on situations where it is not in the best interest of the city for this person to leave. In addition to what we've done with the police contract, Chief Ward and Jeb Warner at the 911 Center both decided that it would behoove them to also have these contracts in place. So we created those 2 based upon what we already had for the police department.
You know, sitting in that chair as well as, I don't know that I really support the idea of giving that much leeway to the chief of both executive chiefs and to that. I don't know if I support giving that much leeway to let them, the contract comes to us for us to vote on a contract. So in essence, by saying, but they have leeway to change the contract, then it shouldn't be to us to vote for it in the first place. So I don't know if I agree with that, to let the chief and the chief, executive chief and the police or fire chief have that kind of leeway to make that decision. If we're doing it by a contract with an employee, I kind of think that puts some employees in a better avenue and some not so much. And if I was a disgruntled employee and knew by being a disgruntled employee I could get the heck out of my contract, then I'd become one just to get the heck out of my contract if I didn't think I had the money to pay back the contract. So I like the idea of having a contract because we did that with the police to keep the police here longer. I think that part of it's good, but I don't know that I like the part of allowing the executive head to make those decisions.
A couple hypotheticals.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you, let's just say we've got a police officer, and the police officer has been here a year. Police officer, I think, Chief, I think one of the examples you gave us earlier this afternoon was a police officer gets married and is moving out of state. What happens in that type of situation?
That is one of the discretionary issues that the chief and the mayor could consider and determine whether or not they want to hold the employee to the contract. I think part of our discussion was if they're a good employee who's served the city well, and they're in good standing with the city, it may be one of those times where the city decides it's in our best interest to keep a good relationship with a good employee and let them go ahead and go. But this would not be without us looking at the prorated amount that would be charged anyway. Because sometimes we may hit a situation where that's a very minimal amount, and it may be something that we decide to go ahead and apply to the employee. If it's not a minimal amount, it's going to be very a true hardship on the employee, and they are a fantastic employee that we'd like to keep a good relationship with. I think those are the situations where the consideration may be to let them go ahead and go.
Not only that, the way we've written it, it's not an all or nothing thing. We've given us the ability to modify or alter the payment terms. In other words, we give ourselves the freedom to say, you know what, we still want you to pay that money back, but maybe you could pay it back to us over 2 years instead of having to pay it within 10 days as we currently have it. It's not just either you're not going to pay it or you are going to pay it. It's the ability to say, well, we'll waive half of it or otherwise tweak those terms. And I mean, I don't know, but
Tweaking the terms of how the employee pays it back, I will concur with that because they could be in a hardship circumstance, and so that would be helpful to them and still achieve what the city needs as far as being paid back for educating and allowing them to have a different opportunity. But it's still, you got so much discretion that, I don't know, I think you're also opening yourself up for a lot of potential of lawsuits. The first person that you've let 5 people say, okay, don't worry about it, you're a good employee, blah, blah, blah. The first person that you deny, and he says, well, but you said okay for these 5, how is that not going to end up into a lawsuit? I know about these lawsuits. How's it not going to end up into one?
I think it would be incumbent upon Chief Bossy or Chief Ward and myself to have findings that would underpin that decision, that would assist. My opinion on this, it's very much, it's very similar to our overall personnel management system. Council sets up the broad framework, you create the positions, you create the salaries, but the mayor is the personnel officer. And it's based on very specific circumstances and the recommendation of the chief. To me, it seems like a personnel situation, and it should be an administrative decision. But I don't vote on this. This is your all's. This is your all's consideration.
Can I ask 2 more quick questions, Mayor, if I could?
Certainly.
First one is whether it be the dispatch, police, or fire, and whether you want to look back 12 months or 24 months. Has there been quite a bit of turnover in any of those 3 departments?
There's not a huge amount in the fire department. I know in my tenure here, we've lost 1 or 2 employees to Lexington. 2 so far. And Lexington's hiring again this year. Because of their retirements, just like us, they'll probably be hiring every year. And they do pay significantly better than Georgetown because of their size. And our employees get good training here, so they make viable candidates. In the dispatch organization, we've not had a lot of people jumping from dispatch to, say, the police department, but we do have some high turnover there. I gave you the example of they interview, they say they see this as a segue into getting into the police department. I think there's a strong desire to want to prevent that more than anything. We will allow it. We want you to get there and grow with us, but we want you to first give 2 years where you start and get your solid footing there.
Last question. do other, or would we be the first city to do this, or are there other cities out there that are already doing this?
Yeah, there are other cities that do this. I believe our original agreement came from another city. Can't quote to you which one it was, but it is something that most cities actually put in place.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. What's our leverage to collect? Either in one payment or over time. How do you? I know you have a contract, but do we have any collateral?
And that's really funny because we've not yet come across a situation where we've had to collect anything. This is the first season right now, actually, where we'd be looking at some employees that we'd have to collect from. So the contract says that we have to collect it within 3 months of their termination. It doesn't go on us to say exactly how that's collected. So I think, again, some discretion on, will you pay us in one lump sum, will you pay us over this many weeks or this many months, has not been completely set in stone. I think it would be more open than anything.
Do we have an idea what that cost might be if they've been here either 1 year or 2 year? I'm just curious.
Can either one of you comment for that?
Generally $22,000 to start with, and it's 3 years. It's a third.
So $7,000 a year? That's a lot.
It'd be significant.
So they're here 1 year and they leave. They owe us $15,000.
That's what it would be under the proration.
I don't know, Andrew. How do you force that, Mayor?
Well, the thing is, from a very practical point of view, in discussing this with Chief Bosse, we're unaware of very many examples anywhere where this has been enforced. Our officers are aware of it, and some of the men who have recently made a decision to leave have approached Chief Bosse and wanted to talk about this specific issue. They're doing their best to do the right thing, but take advantage of reasonable opportunities. What the Chief's looking for is just a reasonable way for us to have that conversation with people when it's clearly in their best interest, and in those situations where occasionally it may be in our best interest for someone to move on. Just, Chief, am I mischaracterizing our discussion?
No, not at all. I think we send them for free to get certified as police officers. Once they have that certification, they can go anywhere in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and get a job as a certified police officer. We pay their salary for those 22 weeks plus 8 weeks of FTO. So we've invested quite a bit in that particular employee. So that's why the 3 years for the academy. We have given them a resource that will be valuable to them for the rest of their life, so long as there's not a year interval in between employment. And you're very it's an astute observation that you may have an employee that it was better for your citizenry that they chose to move on, and you want to be able to let them out of that contract. And $22,000 is a lot less than $1 million lawsuit because this guy wasn't suited for the job. So, and again, you have to trust myself and the chief's judgment on the employee, and the quality of, because it does boil down to this level of service that you're getting, their citizens getting from that employee. If they're not getting a level of service and we've worked with them and we can't get it there, then it may be a better option to have that available to you.
So you feel like this benefit outweighs maybe any deterrent that a prospective employee might have to come to work?
Yeah, it's pretty standard around the state, though. If your government, the government you're going to be working for, paid for your certification, that you owe them 3 years of service.
So. You would look at it like if you hired an officer and he stayed for 1 year and he's still indebted to us since $15,000. If he's going to another department only making $7,000-8,000 a year, he might just hang in there until that time's out, and that's how you can look at that.
Right, and generally what will happen is the agency itself will pay for the officer.
Right.
So where they're
that's
going.
good for us. I get it.
Wow.
Is that
So
not
the
how
agency
the other
will
employment
pay.
contract is? If I remember,
They want 'em.
isn't it supposed to be that if they
Wow.
go to another, like say, they go to Cynthiana, and Cynthiana the one that's supposed to buy them out?
Yeah, but I don't know how. I'm not sure if you can hold Cynthiana to that,
Right.
you know.
Right.
It would
I
have
think
to be an
it's-
agreement between that employee and that Cynthia.
I think it's how it's written, though, just to say that if another city pulls in, that it was supposed to really hit that the city pays. But I'm with you, I don't know how you hold it too. But one thing I worry about is if you've got the guy, your scenario of you've got the bad apple in the bunch and you want to get rid of the bad apple, this is a great way to move one out the door. But what about everybody else that comes along and they're not a bad apple? So who would you ever enforce this with? What's the
Well-
example of when you would, because you've given us more examples of when you're not going to enforce it than when will you enforce it?
We've not really had to because everybody sees it as a 3-year contract, and so to this point, with very rare exception, they all accept the fact that they got 3 years to work. Now, I think there's a 3-day, one of them's got 3 days and the other one's got 26 days. I'm not comfortable telling a guy,
Right.
you can't have
3
that
days,
job
yeah.
because you got 26 more days with us. And I know you aren't either.
But you're talking 26 more days, you're talking next to nothing as far as if there was a payout for that. But for that is already in place, and so there is an employment contract with the police department in place now, but this is different than that. This is a different employment contract.
Right.
Correct?
Do you think this hurts us at all? Maybe not so much in the police, but possibly, and maybe not even in fire, but maybe in dispatch, as far as hurting us
I really don't think it will.
from a recruiting standpoint?
Right, right. I don't think that 2 years, I mean, obviously in the world of recruiting and job placement and being a hiring manager, you want to look at someone's longevity with a job. So anyone who's giving less than 2 years to one job before moving on to the other probably have some reason of concern to look at their work history anyway. But we've not had, as far as with the police department, as long as we've been using this contract, we've not had anyone blink an eye at it. They come here planning to stay, and as Chief alluded to, sometimes they just get a better opportunity that not only could benefit them, but could truly benefit us. And I just don't see us having a situation where a 1-year officer comes and wants to get out of this. I think it's going to be those like we have right now. Chief, I have 3 days. Can you help me out with 3 days? Or I've got 26 days. Can you help me with that? I think those are the situations we'll run into.
What would the cost be for 3 days?
Well, we have not figured out that prorated amount yet, but it'd be very minimal.
Yeah.
We talked about this. Honestly, when the mayor and the chief and I met, we talked about it. We talked about the pros and cons of making people stick to the contract for the pure sake that it's a contract. You signed it, we're going to stick to it. But chief and the mayor were much more comfortable with the contract, and I became more comfortable with it as well with them, that we do have some discretion. It's tough to lock ourselves and these employees into something that, for example, rather than us having to terminate a poorly performing employee who might be saying, well, I'm getting ready to leave anyway, we avoid a termination and an unemployment cost and a potential lawsuit by simply being able to have this caveat and say, we're letting you out of that contract, by all means move on.
Well, I'm just saying the opposite. If you start letting a lot of people slide through the contract and don't hold them to the contract that they were aware of, but life happens and changes. But if you don't hold them to a contract, then you're eventually going to get, right now it's a guy with 3 days, it's a guy with 26 days, but then you're going to get the guy with one that has 1 year left, and you're going to get the 2 years left. And by not being consistent to hold people to the contract, I don't say you're going to hold anybody to a contract. I think it would be a waste at that point in time to have the contract.
I think if you start letting people off of it, the word's going to get around, it's going to lose its effectiveness, and why have it?
That's right.
Back up. Back up.
I think the alternative is no contract, and then you don't have anything to.
No control.
Is it a little bit of a bluff? Maybe.
But it hasn't been.
But
But
it
it will
what?
be. It could become. It's going to become. That's what I see. It hasn't been so much of one, but it has the potential now of becoming one.
I don't. Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, I think I think you would have the same problem that I have in telling a guy, no, you have to stay here another 2 months. You can't take that job. do I want an employee who's passing up a job and I'm going to make him stay here, providing the level of service that a police officer does to your citizens? I don't think we want that.
But you're not telling him that. What you're telling him is, there is this contract. I know you didn't think you were going to get this fantastic offer now, but you've got whatever amount of days on it. So we'll make out a payment plan that you can take it if you can't work it out with your new employer to give you those 30 days or whatever it is.
Well, we'd have to sue them, but yeah.
Yeah, and for the council, for the council's understanding, this situation arose from some very specific employment situations that the chief is facing, where we sat and talked about the flexibility that would benefit him in managing his department. We talked through the pros and cons. I felt as though I trusted the chief's judgment well enough in handling these personnel matters, and I'm relatively confident in the way he and I will handle them jointly that I was willing to bring this request to the council. And if the council's uncomfortable with it, certainly you can vote it down. I was hopeful to not handcuff the chief solidly, at least to that extent.
That's good. So all you can do is read the municipal order, and if it passes, it passes. As you said earlier, not everybody's going to vote the same way.
That's exactly right. And if you all, I want to make sure you've had a chance to ask Megan or the chief all the questions you want.
And I hope you know that every time we have a questionable employment decision that we have to make, we use all of our resources at KLC. Andrew and I will sit down very quickly and make a call over. We get some free legal advice, and we'll just run it by them. What do you think about this? Do you think we have some liability here? Do you think we're safe? And we will always do that. So if we come across a contractual situation and they say we don't feel that's a safe move to make, we'll advise the mayor and the chiefs in that way.
And I'm sure you've already called them and talked to them about this and the flexibility in the mayor and the chiefs.
We have not talked to them about the fact that we put in the discretion.
Do you not think you should have maybe before you brought it here?
Well, Andrew, do you think we had reason to?
You don't have personnel anyway.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Please.
Thanks. Because I, like the mayor, would absolutely trust Chief Bossy's discretion, without a shadow of a doubt. And I do the mayor's as well. But if we put this into place, and I'm just saying, one day Chief Bossy's going to retire, one day mayor is not going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that do with
How
people?
quickly they forget.
There's going to be somebody else sitting in that chair, and there's going to be somebody else sitting in that seat.
Right.
What does that do to council to change that if it's misused?
Right. Here's my thought on it. I believe that the original contract that was put in place was probably put in place for a very specific reason and did not have a discretionary section in it for a very specific reason. I believe that now we have a staff at hand that can use that discretionary measure for good cause. And if we ever do not, we're only approving this by municipal order. There's a reason for not approving things like this by ordinance. We don't want to have the time of 2 full readings to be able to make a change. If ever it starts not to work, we simply bring back a new municipal order for 1 reading with you, and it's changed.
Gotcha.
So we can do that.
Okay. Answers my question.
Thank you. Shall we read the municipal order, please?
An order approving agreements for new members of the Georgetown Police Department, Fire Department, and 911 Center. Whereas the Georgetown Police Department, the Georgetown Fire Department, and the Georgetown Scott County 911 Center have a need to discourage turnover among newly hired employees, and whereas the departments have developed an agreement for reimbursements of employment training costs should recently hired employees leave the respective departments to work for another corresponding department. Now, therefore, it is hereby ordered by the Georgetown City Council that the attached agreements will be executed and enforced for all new hires in the Georgetown Police Department, the Georgetown Fire Department, and the Georgetown Scott County 911 Center.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I might have misheard a key sentence in that.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hoffman, I don't know where on that paragraph it was, but did you say that did I hear you correctly in that it stated that if you left to go to another department?
Another corresponding department.
Corresponding.
Whether it be dispatch, fire,
Training
or...
calls should recently hired employees leave the respective departments to work for another corresponding department.
So we say, for example, under the police contract, under the 911 contract, they leave and accept employment with another law enforcement agency. Say under fire, another fire department. We say under police. With another peace officer with another law enforcement agency. So it is specific to going from a fire department to another fire department.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's the way you want it. You don't, if they got a job with some other entity, that doesn't matter, right?
It was never written that way to start with. Is that anything that you wanted in there? I didn't think it was.
And our Jeb Warner, I guess he's in support of it as well.
Jeb Warner is in support of it.
So we have all three chiefs, department heads, we have the mayor, we have our top staff that's in support of it. It's hard for me not to support something, at least to give it a chance.
Right.
When we have a situation like that. Right. I'll make a motion for approval.
A second.
Motion's been made and seconded, Ms. Early. Shall we call the roll?
Sure. Mr. Bradley?
No.
Mrs. Conway?
Yes.
Mrs. Singer-Erdley?
Yes.
Mr. Lesby?
Yes.
Mr. Showalter?
Yes.
Mrs. Tingle Saints?
No.
Mrs. Tackett?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Counsel.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next on your agenda, we've been talking for some time about changing the phone system here in City Hall. I think I've laughingly referred to our phone system as being Alexander Graham Bell's beta version. But we have done an RFQ, thank you, for VoIP, the Voice over Internet Protocol, the VoIP design, procurement, and implementation. We received a responsive RFQ. Two of them. And I believe we are ready to bring you a municipal order approving the contract from Net Gain. Is that correct? And that is in your packet.
So we did a professional RFQ, a request for qualifications, which is a non-cost-based selection. Net Gain Technologies received the highest score, and we met with them and spoke over the phone and negotiated a price for all of the deliverables that we listed in the RFQ. Mr. Wayne Logan has been nice enough to sit through the entirety of this meeting. Even though I warned him he was low down on the list. And if anybody has any questions, he's here to talk about it. Again, this is part of our sort of step-by-step process. What NetGain we're proposing that they do for us is to come in to take the phone audit that was done, to evaluate that, to assist us with terminating the lines that need to be terminated, with restructuring the ones that we need to keep, negotiating new phone contract rates, helping us discontinue the awful Centrex system that we're on that's costing us $1,700 a month, and designing, procuring, implementing, and training on, or assisting with the training on a new phone system that we still believe when all said and done, will result in a significant cost savings to the city. So, and this money is already in our IT budget. We're simply asking for approval of the contract with NetGain.
Mary, I know Tracy probably needs to read the ordinance. I'll make a motion for approval. I know we have a relationship, and it's been a very, I think, a very good relationship with NetGain. They've got a very local flavor to this area, so I like that aspect as well. And Andrew, I appreciate the work that you've done in relation to all this, and I think there's quite a bit of savings that can be realized, or has been realized.
Thank you. Motion's been made.
Second.
Second. Ms. Early? Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It wasn't that worth staying for.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm thinking.
We'll see you tomorrow, Wayne.
Just we'll spend the night.
I want you all to know. I emailed Wayne about this last week. He called me back in 5 minutes, and he said, I'm on the beach in Florida, but I wanted to return your phone call.
True story.
Good thing vacation didn't last no longer, though, wasn't it?
Somebody give me a timeout, send me to the beach.
I'd have to question your judgment, but I'm glad you got this contract.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Chief, resolution approving the LEPP
He's on the phone outside.
grant.
Yeah.
I'll hop up.
There you go, Chief.
Chief,
No, I was, this was one of the grants that we got. It's a 100% grant for body armor from the state.
Motion.
I don't know if you go.
100% grant motion, there you go.
100% grant
Made.
motion. There you go. I'm good.
second, Mr. Bradley.
You can go back out, Chief, we don't need you.
It's gone.
All in favor of the body armor grant, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Listen, I'm going to give you one quick explanation about garbage truck bids and where we stand tonight and the action that I'm going to recommend to you. Just by way of explanation, I've got to go back a little bit in our recent history. We had bid for a new garbage truck, and you'll recall that after reviewing our bid process, I rejected all the bids and asked that we rebid the garbage truck again. When we rebid the garbage truck, we took very great care to make sure that we did all of our own research. We got no information from vendors. We used open source information, companies' websites. We constructed our own set of specs. And I am completely confident that we did this second bid arrangement in an appropriate and legal fashion. When we decided to reject the two bids from our earlier bid activity, I had letters written to each of those bidders, and in those letters, in the last paragraph, we said that if we rebid this, we will let you know. We've gone through the bid process. We had the letter or email giving notice to the two former bidders fell between the cracks. We did not notify them of a second bid opportunity. However, we did every legal step that is required with the bid. We had two valid bids come in, two responsive bids on exactly the equipment that we spec'd out. One of the bids that we received was from one of the vendors who had bid the first time that we didn't notify. They responded to the legal notice that we always use. We use the process that we always use. We also got a second responsive vendor, so we know that our process worked and the information got out to the vendor community. However, it came to my attention late Friday afternoon that we had not sent the special notice, if you will, to the two previous vendors. Again, one of those previous vendors still bid, and we did get two responsive bids. However, we did not give the special notice to either of the two previous vendors, and one of those vendors did not bid the second time around. We could present to you tonight that we've done this in a completely legal fashion and we got responsive bids. And we could recommend that you accept those bids. And I think we would be on solid legal ground if we did so. However, as soon as I found out that we did not send the notice to the two previous bidders like we said we would do, it is my opinion that all we have is our integrity, and by extension, our reputations. I intend to do every step in this office correctly. You all have communicated to me as a council how you want every step from the council's perspective to be done correctly. And I believe that the city's integrity and the council's integrity is far too important for us to skip a step in the process that we said we would do. So even though we have two legal bids and we need the truck, because we did not give a vendor special consideration with notification, as we said we would, I'm going to recommend that these bids be rejected and we rebid the truck again. This may be an excessive move on my part, but I'm acting in an abundance of caution to protect the council's integrity, my integrity, and the city's integrity. We're going to do our work correctly. Even though we're legal here, we didn't do everything we said we'd do. So with your permission, I'd like to reject both of these bids and start over again.
Mr. Mayor,
Makes sense.
I think your action that you're taking should be applauded for what you're doing. But I do have a question, just because the numbers are here, how does that affect the bid for the next time around?
I don't know exactly.
Okay. Well, I think what you're doing, is perfectly fine.
I would think that, of course, now you're going to have to notify these two, plus the one that hasn't,
Right.
and whoever else wants to turn. I'd say probably the two bids that you've got right now will probably come in as the same. You know, you might have three bids come up, prices come in. I'd say those two probably stay roughly the same. I don't think they'll change at all.
But what I'm just thinking, this is now a public record
Right.
document,
Yeah.
so the other one could come back and
Right.
Come out much.
$1,000 less.
Right.
Of course, you know. you can
But the other one
reject.
might do the same thing.
Of course,
Never
the difficulty in taking this step is exacerbated by the fact that the vendor who did not get special notice and who did not vote did not meet the bid specifications the first time, and did not have the 12-foot arm available that the city has requested.
So they may not have done.
Well,
They
maybe
may
you need
not
to-
respond,
Yeah.
but to me, that's secondary to
Yeah.
us doing what we said we'd do.
Agree with you.
I would too, Mayor. I would agree. And I would say that there have been times where we've rejected all bids and we've put the whole project out to bid again. So, I mean, you've got, I think, very good justification for doing what you're doing. I'd support your recommendation.
Thank you.
Well, we'll be ready in 2 weeks for another garbage.
We were we'll have to advertise it. We were reluctant to rush it to the paper today.
Right.
We just, rushing things always,
Right.
We could open it on Wednesday.
We could,
We advertise on Thursday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday,
Well,
Tuesday.
you probably could. By
we
next
might be able
council
to bring
meeting.
it
Yeah,
back
right.
to you at the next
Because I
council.
know we desperately need a garbage truck. Yeah.
We had, as you all know, we
Four
missed some
down
routes
this week,
last
yeah,
week because
yeah.
we had 4 trucks down. So this is a real operational need, but
The right call.
this is the way we're going to do things, and I appreciate your all's support with it.
Do you need a motion for that, Mayor, or just?
I don't think so. Just as long as you all are comfortable with the action.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to explain it to you since it's on your agenda. And it's awkward, it's going to take a little more work, but we will do what we said we'd do. At long last, we're at the point of council comments. And I think I'll start with Ms. Conway tonight.
I want to know something about the property, if it's city property or private property, that's where Royal Springs is, and you cross the street, and the jail that's now the Art Center. That property that goes up and touches the concrete, the partial concrete wall, it's got kind of a hot pink wrought iron rail that's there, and then it's missing, and then it's there again. Does that belong to us?
The bridge over West Main Street. That's an interesting debate that we're having with the Transportation Cabinet.
It's kind of, not to mention, I was thinking about when you were talking about cleaning up on Earth Day, and it's kind of a mess down there, not next to the art place, but closer to the other side of the water over here. And it's dangerous because the block or the rock wall is there, and then it's cracked, and then that short wrought iron railing is there, and then it disappears, and just a safety factor.
It's a safety factor, Millie,
I
and
walked home one day.
there's also a sapling growing out of the wall, which
Yes.
is affecting the integrity of the
Yes.
wall. There's some chunks out of the
Crumbling.
crumbling out of what would be the safety retaining wall where you walk. We've discussed all of those with District 7.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It is, I meant to, that was on our laundry list. It is our position with the Transportation Cabinet that decades of heavy truck traffic, weight and vibration have affected that bridge. It's the oldest masonry structure in Georgetown.
Yeah.
It's an important historical bridge that we think needs some attention, and we think the State Transportation Cabinet has caused the damage, and it's their responsibility to fix. This is a long, ongoing conversation that goes back over 25 years with the Transportation Cabinet.
Well, when I was a kid, I used to walk on that little wall, and now if a kid tries to climb up there, they're going to be over.
And you
fall over the
may have when you were a kid, but it needs attention. It's not attractive, and it's one of the most important historic structures we have in Georgetown. Anything else? Holly?
I'm good.
Marvin?
Got a couple phone calls. 508 Military Street, 4 or 5 cars, junk cars are parked in the driveway. And I've had 2 or 3 people complain about that. And the next one is Holly Drive and Hill Street on the corner. The lady lives right on, right across, almost right behind you. Said that the garbage trucks were turning and cutting in her yard.
Yes.
We can control that.
Well, and I said you would. But I told her, first thing we need to find out is your property line come all the way up the bank to the road. So it might not be her property line either. And she agreed with that, but she's put blocks out, she put railroad ties out, and they're just mashing them down. So,
Okay, we can affect that.
there you go, that's it.
Yeah, she's tried to put blocks
Oh,
to
yeah,
retain
she
it,
has,
and they keep,
yeah.
it's the cut. It's
Yeah,
when you
it's
make
the
the
cut.
Right
turn.
behind your house,
Yes.
Billy?
Yeah. The
It's a
lane,
little alley.
Holly that turns right there on the corner right there. The
It's
little
an
white
alley.
house on the lot there.
Yeah. it's
She
the
stopped me
alley.
yesterday.
Oh, that's right, 'cause she mowed there. Yeah.
Anything else, Marvin?
No, sir, I was,
They do. I noticed that.
Sorry. Go ahead. We'll finish the comments first.
Mark?
I know.
Chuck?
That'd be the right
Con?
way. No. I wonder if it's a right of way.
He's already left.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I probably should. Just for council's understanding, and the gentleman from Rucker Avenue is already gone. But
He got tired.
He got tired.
He's at home watching on TV, though.
But he's watching, hopefully.
He's good.
We've made repeated trips to Rucker Avenue. In the last 2 weeks, I've been up there maybe 4 times, walking, looking. I've walked around what's now the Highlander house and Mr. Price's house. The house that Mr. Highlander purchased last year during the real cold weather, they did a great job of cleaning out the debris, cleaning out the lot, and made real progress. We expected that as soon as the weather turned, we would see that progress on the house, the 159 Rucker Avenue.
Right.
And we have not seen that progress. The porch has not been touched. There are several windows missing. You recall that there was fire damage to the house after this transaction took place, and the fire damage is still evident on the rear of the house, Chief. There's easy access. You can just walk through the hole that the fire created into the house is not secure. We did meet, Andrew met with Mr. Highlander this week and expressed our dissatisfaction with the progress that's been made.
Gave him 2 weeks.
Gave him 2 weeks to make substantial progress on 159. Our agreement with Mr. Price, the last contract we had with Mr. Price, indicated that he had to clean up the front of his house there was farm equipment and debris and what one man's junk is another man's treasure. And his front porch was very cluttered. And the contract that he signed indicated that everything would be moved, not just behind the house, but off the site.
Or in a secure storage shed.
In a secure storage shed, and that the front porch would be kept neat and orderly. We've been up there and we've walked and we've looked, and none of those definitions apply. So we are going to author another letter to Mr. Price, give him a date certain upon which, if it's not cleaned up, that Public Works will do that for him.
You'll have the police up there when you do it.
We will. So we are watching. We're not satisfied with the progress on either of the 2 houses, and we're ready to take steps to force that action.
May I address the council for just 1 second?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Council had approved the near-site clinic last year, and I just wanted to make sure everyone got their email that indicated that this Wednesday at 1 o'clock will be the open house there. It's our grand opening. All of our employees have attended their meetings to learn about the clinic and what it's offering, and we are really, really hoping for strong utilization. At the conclusion of the 3-day meetings, we already had almost half of our employee population signed up and registered with the clinic, so it looks good so far, but really love for all of you guys to be able to be at the open house at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. And if you don't know where the clinic is, you need any directions or any more information about it, just email me or call me and I'll be glad to give it to you.
And any user of the city's health insurance plan, including families, if you have a family plan, are eligible to use this clinic. And for a lot of maintenance situations or allergies or things of that nature, this is a quick visit at no charge. There are prescriptions. If they're generic, normal use prescriptions, they probably have them on site and will give them to you free as you leave. So this could be a real cost saver for our employees, and would like for you all to be aware of the benefits as well.
A lot of the employees said it sounds too good to be true. So I'm glad that we're able to give them an opportunity like that. I think it'll really help put money in their pockets and make them happy employees.
We'll send you another email reminding you of this Wednesday. That grand opening will be something nice to see.
Yep.
If you have them using it and they have positive feedback, you'll have the whole city in no time.
Oh, I know.
Employees using it. So that's
Yeah, I
great.
really think so. I was surprised when they told me we already had half of our population registered. So that says that a lot of people are really, really excited to get started.
That's
So,
fantastic.
yep, it
And
is.
Karen, I think they said that of the Toyota Two-Show employees, they're now up to It was a huge number, like 85 or 90% utilization.
Wow.
Actually, they have 100% utilization right now.
Hmm.
Yep. When we add our hours, that would drop them down a little bit, but we expect our people to fill up those hours, so they'll still be 100% utilization of the clinic's hours. We really think they'll just keep adding and adding and adding hours, which is always a benefit for our employees.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Good.
The session that I sat through with some of the employees, the questions were pretty interesting. If your family is on the coverage and you need a sports physical, they can do the sports physical for you.
Cool.
And again, if referrals have to be made, they can refer just like any other. It will be a physician that you're seeing. There's no waiting time because you do this by appointment. So 20-minute visit, no cost, no waiting time, and free prescriptions.
Can't you go in on a computer and get an appointment?
Yep, you can do it online, or you can call the number.
Yeah.
We're trying to convince a large group of our employees that it's simple. It's very simple. Just call that number if you don't feel like using a computer. So we want them to know that even if they don't think they understand everything they need to do to get in, it's a simple phone call. And
Where is it located?
it's in the strip beside Walmart that has Sapporo, Papa John's, all of those, and it's at the far end, away from the bypass.
It's over by Soapy Joe's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Over next to that Mr. Soapy Joe's place.
a Soapy Joe's plug.
You can
So we hope to see you there.
get you
Anyone else have anything to come before the
Star
council?
Wars.
My favorite.
Make a motion.
All right, it.
Bye.
Watch us get up run tonight.
I need it.